Rebirth of the Thief. WHO roams the world. Chapter 1. Rebirth. Born into suffering. Suffering leads to death. Parting with one's desire leads to bitterness. Bitterness leads into what one does not desire. Being unable to obtain one's desires leads into suffering. In Buddhism, there are the 8 sufferings. Ni Yan had experienced no fewer than 5 of these sufferings. His whole life since birth had basically been a chronicle of tragedies. Fortunately, it was a short chronicle, because he only lived to the age of 28 before facing his mortality. Perhaps his life ought to have ended at that point. However, at that moment, fate conceived a single turning point. Ni Yan turned over. A feeling of wetness arose from his back as his clothing clung closely to his skin. It was an uncomfortable sensation. He vaguely recalled having been shot in the back and collapsing onto the ground. His blood flowed out, seeping into the earth. Isn't it just death? Ni Yan lay there calmly where he collapsed. To silently pass away like this. Couldn't this also be considered a peaceful death of sorts? He had lain in ambush for 5 whole days at the gates of the Kaozu mansion. There, he waited with great anticipation for Kaozu to emerge. At the moment when Kaozu nearly disappeared into his vehicle, Ni Yan pulled the trigger. Employing his sniper rifle, he delivered a bullet straight through Kaozu's skull. Bang! Blood dyed the ground. Gazing through the scope from a distance, he saw a hole appeared in Kaozu's head. His blood flowing out smoothly. Kaozu's eyes stared vacantly before finally becoming blank as the light in them gradually faded away. Replaying the event in his mind, Ni Yan felt incomparable pleasure in his heart as he recalled the scene of the bullet piercing through Kaozu's head. Naturally, it was because he had been unburdened of his hatred. Kaozu possessed a lifetime of glory and splendor. Yet he died at the hands of a nobody like Ni Yan. Even if he became a ghost, Ni Yan wouldn't be too particularly bitter. In the face of death, everyone was at an equal standing. Even if he had the wealth to rival nations, it still hadn't been able to save his life. Kaozu had committed too many evils. It would be hard for him to escape retribution in the afterlife. At the same moment when Kaozu's brains were blown out, Ni Yan came to a realization. His perspective on life underwent a complete transformation. So everything in life could be determined by no more than a single shot of a sniper rifle. Perhaps tomorrow his picture would appear plastered on the front page of the morning newspaper. The headline would read, "Millionaire Kaozu Assassinated." Below, a giant mug shot would lay on the page for the common people to revere and worship. Immediately after Ni Yan had assassinated Kaozu, Kaozu's personal bodyguards discovered his location and went in pursuit. They shot at Ni Yan, and a single bullet managed to hit him in the back. He felt a burst of sharp pain. So this is how it feels to get shot. His heart gradually grew colder as his life force rapidly escaped his body. Am I about to die? He thought, and let out a faint laugh. He laughed at the bitter shortness of life. He laughed at his life of confusion and hesitation. Only when he was about to die did he finally awaken to reality. Shortly after this realization, tears began to streak down his cheeks. The deep animosity he felt towards his parents had already ceased to exist. The events of the past were now replaying within his mind as if they were some kind of film. The only thing he longed for now in his fading time on this earth was her faint, unblemished smile. She was Ni Yan's fellow classmate in high school. By now, She had already been engaged to someone else. Yet her elegant and refined complexion remained engraved in Ni Yan's mind, the same as it was in the past following the passage of time. Her image became all the more unforgettable. He wondered, when she receives the news of my death, of how I took Cao Zhu out with me, how will she react? Will she sigh? Or perhaps, will she shed tears in grief? The old memories of the past seemed to breach through their constraints and began flooding in. They were now drifting and floating within his mind. He was quite regretful. Sometimes, when you finally realize or understand the truth of something, it is already too late to do anything about it. In this lifetime he truly had too many regrets. Too many unfulfilled desires. Ni Yan reached out to grab at the empty air, wishing to grasp onto something. However, to his dismay, everything had gradually gone out of his reach. Alas! His life had finally reached its limit. Up ahead lay only an eternally silent abyss. Remorse and dismay resembled a dagger as it incessantly sliced at his heart. The pain in his chest was unbearable. What wrongs have I committed in my past life for the heavens to torment and punish me in such a way? Ni Yan's grievances soared to the heavens. He was bitter. He screamed resentfully in his mind as teardrops continually tumbled down his cheeks. The moment seemed to last forever, and Ni Yan was actually completely unaware of how much time had passed. Eventually, his mind calmed down and gradually became serene. His mind was still active as he pondered away. Could it be? Is this death? Perhaps. I'm in spirit form now? For a long time Ni Yan felt sensations in his fingers. Moreover, it felt real. Why? After all this time, why am I still conscious? He immediately sat up, surveying his surroundings. He stared out blankly, at a complete loss. Could it be? Is this the underworld? Ni Yan's dull eyes gradually began to regain their focus. As he looked around, a few old things entered his vision. A wooden bed, a chair, and a visibly damaged floor. Where is this place? Didn't I already die? He felt as if he were in a dream, having a sort of illusory sensation. He began feeling his back. His entire hand felt wet and sticky. However, as he moved his hand into view, he saw that his palm wasn't covered in blood but rather sweat. The wet sensation he felt earlier was due to the clothing on his back having been soaked wet in his own perspiration. What's going on? Didn't I lose a lot of blood? He vaguely recalled his blood being red. It was just like red wine, except with a scarlet tint. It was the color of his life gradually fading away. Ni Yan still felt pain after pinching himself. This really isn't a dream. Don't tell me, assassinating Cao Zhu was a dream as well. Why did it feel so real? It was just as Zhuang Zhu muttered as he awoke from a dream. Am I Zhuang Zhu who dreamt I was a butterfly? Or a butterfly who dreamt it was Zhang Zhu? Quote, how do I determine what is real? And what is a dream? He surveyed his surroundings with a hint of doubt. There were just too many questions left unanswered. Within the dim lighting, there was a shabby-looking wooden bed, chair, and desk. By the wall, there stood the grandfather clock his old man loved to exaggerate as a priceless antique. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. The sound it produced echoed into the silence. Ni Yan recalled that the clock's time had never been accurate. Not even once. It was as if his past memories were stored in an old photo album. They slowly began opening up. This room here feels so familiar. Isn't this the house I lived in when I was in high school? Through the gap in the window curtains, sunlight shone in. He felt a stinging sensation as the sunlight entered his eyes, causing his pupils to violently contract. This was a type of dazzling awakening into reality. I'm still alive. Ni Yan stretched his right hand forward. He gazed at its tenderness and slight immaturity before noticing the sickly pale skin tone. What's going on here? Am I myself from 10 years in the past? Or am I myself from 10 years in the future? Ni Yan scratched his hair in great bewilderment, aligning his train of thought. A few fragments from his memories began emerging. Gradually, they became clearer and distinct. This was the year he turned 18. It was summer vacation and his parents weren't home. He had developed a 40-degree fever that summer and nearly died. Only through luck did he manage to keep his life. During that time, his parents had left him with a bit of money. Immediately afterward, they took off without a word of goodbye. They never returned home, not even after 2 or 3 months. And he wasn't able to reach them through their cell phones either. It was as if they had just vanished without a trace. At that time, he believed his parents didn't want him anymore. He was alarmed, terrified, scared. All kinds of emotions began to plague and burden him. In addition to this, he had also developed that high fever. The experience left a deep trauma within his heart. He became timid, cowering at the slightest breeze. It took him until the age of 25 to begin correcting that personality to some extent. Only afterwards, when he grew up, did he find out that his parents hadn't abandoned him on purpose. Rather, they had borrowed money from a family friend and started up a smuggling businesses at the country's borders. At that time, the country urgently needed a type of metal called polonium. It proved to be an important strategic resource. Following every nation's discovery of this metal's usage, they rapidly began placing restrictions on its export and started hoarding the resource for themselves. It was unknown how Ni Yan's parents were able to find such a source. Although, in the end, they managed to smuggle the metal back into the country, selling it to the government at several hundred times the price they purchased it for. As a result, they earned a huge sum of money. Their current circumstances at the time were very stressful and nerve-wracking. Thus, Ni Yan's parents were unable to contact him through the phone. Furthermore, their matters were classified military secrets. If any information were to leak out, it would result in their deaths. As a consequence, Ni Yan and his parents' misunderstanding became buried in such a way. It took many years after the matter had passed for his father to inform him of the truth. And only then did Ni Yan forgive the both of them. It was that year when his father had earned his first major payout and used it to establish a smelting company. Furthermore, he undertook and completed several large projects, advancing the company's reputation by leaps and bounds. He resolved his family's plight, and as a result, Ni Yan was transferred over to a high-class school within the city. Is it possible? Have I really returned to that time? I can start all over again from the beginning. Ni Yan's current emotional state was hard to describe. Pleasant surprise and nervous apprehension interweaved with each other as his emotions swayed all over the place. He was anxious that everything occurring now was simply a dream. Ni Yan climbed out of his bed and opened the window curtains. Rays of sunlight were scalding as they released their scorching heat onto his skin. The sensation clearly informed him that at present, he truly wasn't dreaming. He bent his head down to see that beside the windowsill lay his textbooks, arranged neatly on the table. Mechanical theory, automation, language, advanced mathematics, AI design, and so on. Ni Yan flipped open a few pages. The familiar characters were like a clear stream, along with his past memories. They rejuvenated his mind. These textbooks represented the youth that had passed by. After reaching his senior year of high school, he transferred to a high-class inner-city school. The projects that his father had undertaken succeeded. From then on, any materialistic desires he had were easily satisfied. His rise into becoming a well-off son of an entrepreneur caused him to turn lazy and idle. By the time he had graduated high school, his academic marks were definitely less than stellar. Afterwards, his father spent quite a bit of money to allow him to attend a famous university. Only, by the time he graduated from university, he had learned absolutely nothing. He wasted every day sitting around idly. When he reached the age of 25, his father's business started suffering from the attacks of the Kaozu Century Financial Group. Several family friends who were also trusted confidants were bribed by Kaozu into betraying Ni Yan's father. Thus, his company met with several setbacks in quick succession. Money, once more, had become a concern for the family. His father committed suicide by overdosing on drugs, and his mother fell ill due to the grief. She eventually passed away in the end as well. Only after suffering the pain of losing both his parents did Ni Yan begin making progress in his studies, self-studying in numerous courses. However, by that time it was already too late. He had simply missed too many opportunities. Once full of longing, Ni Yan was prepared to hew out a piece of the world for himself. However, how could Kaozu allow the son of his former enemy to make a comeback? With Kaozu interfering behind the scenes, there wasn't a single company who dared to hire him, leaving Ni Yan with nowhere to go. If it weren't for him playing the virtual reality game Conviction, scraping by with what little income he could earn by selling items, he wouldn't have been able to even eat a meal. He had no hopes of gloriously defeating Kaozu by rising to prominence as an underdog. However, an anxious hare could still give a nasty bite. Being at an impasse, Ni Yan's final decision was to take Kaozu out with him. The sound of the gunshot vented out all of Ni Yan's resentments and loathing. His destiny seemed bright and clear. Sir Kaozu probably never thought his life would conclude in such a way. Ni Yan believed himself to have died and never expected time to play a joke on him, returning him to the summer vacation of his second year in high school. And though he still wasn't able to contact his parents, he could at least be certain they were still alive. When he thought of this, tears began filling his eyes. When a son wanted to provide for his parents yet the parents were already gone, no other person was capable of understanding the bitterness and grief in Ni Yan's heart. The heavens had given him another chance. He would absolutely never become confused and act indecisively again. It would take a little over 20 days for his mother and father to return home. Since it was summer vacation right now, at the moment, he had no choice but to stay at home. That year, in the latter half of the second semester during my second year of high school, if I recall correctly, the virtual reality game, Conviction, had just recently been released. Ni Yan distinctly remembered the scene of countless financial firms establishing a presence in Conviction's rapidly rising popularity on the year of the game's release. They poured tremendous amounts of resources into the large-scale development of this virtual reality game. It was truly due to these numerous financial firms that Conviction deservedly became the second world for humanity. After he entered the high-class inner-city school, he was finally introduced to the game by his best friend. By that time a semester had already passed. Only by then, many people were already at a very high level. He had already missed the best period of time to begin leveling. Left behind, he had no choice but to try and catch up with all his might. The faded pages of the photo album, his memory, once again turned anew, revealing their bright colors. The most unforgettable moments in his life had come from the time he'd spent in the game. He had come to know so many friends in that game. In the calendar of his life, it was only because of them that those days of loneliness had not appeared too excessively senseless. Prior to assassinating Cao Zhu, Ni Yan was formerly a level 180+ great thief. Though he wasn't at the summit, he could barely be considered to be among the top experts. Ni Yan suddenly recalled there was a bank card containing all of his savings in the drawer. I have the money to buy a virtual reality helmet, Ni Yan thought to himself. Pulling open the drawer, he turned everything over, searching. At last, he found a silver-white bank card from the corner of the drawer. If he recalled correctly, the amount of money stored inside his bank account was 2,000 credits. 1 credit the equivalent of $1. This money had come from him saving expenses on food and clothes over the course of several years. Back then, he wanted to buy the most advanced Model X3 computer. However, by the time he waited the several years needed to save up the money, the Model X3 had already become obsolete. Naturally, his pocket money was not merely this little after his father's business had become successful. Due to his father wanting to make it up to Ni Yan, he gave Ni Yan practically everything he asked for. Something he wanted. If it could be bought, it would arrive. Ni Yan was 18 years old this year. However, he possessed the soul of his 28-year-old self. Everything would once again start anew. From henceforth, a new chapter in his life would open up. However, without the sufficient capital, he wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. So, he would start from the game, using his prior experiences of the game. Becoming a professional gamer and earning a little bit of money was a very simple affair. Ni Yan remembered the time when Conviction's first gaming helmets had just begun selling. In an effort to make them spread, the prices were unusually cheap. There were 3 entry models: Model A, B, and C. Each entry model's configurations were unique. The immersion level of the virtual reality helmets ranged from 76%–98%. A sum of 1,300 credits was enough to afford the cheapest model. With the current amount of money Ni Yan had stored in his savings, it was sufficient for him to purchase the lowest-tier model virtual reality helmet. He could clearly and distinctly recall many items and things from the game. If he started all over again, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to procure some results. Placing his bank card within his pocket, he shifted his gaze towards the advanced mathematics textbook on the side. As if God himself had just slightly nudged the textbook up. It trembled a little bit before a crisp new $100 bill emerged and fell out. At that moment, he recalled several things as memories once again began floating into his mind. He suddenly remembered that the first meeting between him and Si Yao would occur today. He had taken the $100 bill and left the house to buy medicine at the pharmacy. Si Yao was his deskmate during his senior year of high school, as well as the prettiest girl in his class. Once again, he reminisced on this past event, a segment of his life that he couldn't bear to look at without causing his wrists to tremble. After nearly a decade had passed, Si Yao and the publicly recognized gifted student in his class, Lu Rui, had fallen in love. The two of them had moved together to the moon. Only after he and Si Yao communicated through several calls did he find out Si Yao was not the least bit happy. When matters relating to the past in his senior year of high school were brought up, both of them would sigh incessantly. If he had just been a little bit more courageous. If only he wasn't so gutless and inferior in front of Si Yao. Perhaps he wouldn't have missed his chance. Sometimes there were decisions that lasted for an entire lifetime. They would become regrets that one would never be able to resolve. At the time, Si Yao always liked wearing a white skirt, pure and beautiful. Her appearance remained engraved deeply in Ni Yan's heart. This sort of melancholic yearning was just like the sound of a flute playing in the evening. Tranquil and far away in the distance, Ni Yan glimpsed at the shabby-looking clock. The hands pointing to 3 o'clock. There still might be enough time. He picked up the $100 bill, rushed down the stairs out the door. His family lived in a suburban district. It was extremely bleak, a shabby street that wasn't at all wide. And as the wind blew over, it picked up a lot of dust contrary to what one might expect. Many trees were seeded on either side of the street. Under the blazing hot sunlight, they remained lush and flourishing, casting shade on the earth below them. Greeted with a hot afternoon, no pedestrians could be seen walking by. Cars were also few and far between. Occasionally, 1 or 2 hover cars would drive by. In the past, Ni Yan had loathed this town very much. However, after his reincarnation, as he once again met with this bleak place, Ni Yan did not feel loathing or disgust, to the contrary. He unexpectedly felt an amiable familiarity. This was the place he lived in when he was 18 years old. Before Ni Yan reached the age of 25, he was timid and weak. It was not unrelated to the living environment of the former years of his life. He was just a little boy from a small town whose family suddenly became wealthy. And because of this, he was transferred over to a high-class city school, originally during his first and second year of high school. His academics could actually be regarded as pretty exceptional. However, by the end, it was the complete inverse. He was also frequently ridiculed for wearing tacky clothing. In addition to the events that occurred during that hot summer, it caused him to have a very low self-esteem and left behind many psychological insecurities. By the time he moved to a new environment, he had already become insecure and timid, seemingly never fitting in with everything and everyone. If he hadn't come to know several good friends, it would be hard to say he wouldn't have suffered a mental breakdown. However, this was in the past. Presently, never did he expect that after going through an entire lifetime, he would return to where it all started. This time, he promised to himself that he would never repeat the mistakes of his previous self again. He sprinted off towards the pharmacy. The surrounding buildings looked somewhat shabby. There were no signs of human life. Following the increasing speed of the urbanization process, the people of this small town would migrate towards the dense crowds of large cities. and the area within this small town's borders would become increasingly desolate as the population became fewer and fewer. After 100 years, this area would become demolished and once more change into an open field. Over here is the school, and on the other side is the supermarket. Like an old horse that knew the way, Ni Yan gazed at the surrounding buildings with familiarity. His frame of mind gradually became more optimistic. I've gone back. I've truly gone back. In the past, he had always held a lot resentment towards his unjust fate. However, now he was grateful towards the heavens. I'm going to start all over again. I'll do it right this time. Ni Yan was tempted to scream these words at the top of his lungs, venting out all of the indescribable emotions he had held within his heart. Chapter 2. To meet once again. Ni Yan increasingly neared the pharmacy. However, as he was crossing the road, as if by some supernatural occurrence, he tripped and fell hard onto the pavement. When one reaches the peak of happiness, sorrow is soon to strike. Ah! Ni Yan hissed in pain. His hands felt numb from breaking the fall, and his knee was bleeding from scraping off the pavement. Ni Yan sat up with great difficulty. His knee had been badly cut open, exposing raw flesh and blood. At that time, a pink hovercar happened to be passing through the area. It halted, not far from where Ni Yan had fallen. The hovercar was of top quality. Truly a rare sight in this peaceful little town. It appeared to be a limited edition hovercar, valued around $90 million. Something an ordinary family certainly couldn't afford. A young lady in a white skirt appeared, stepping out after the car door was opened. Urgently, she ran over to where Ni Yan had fallen. Fellow student, are you all right? A clear and pleasant voice appeared to be deeply concerned as it passed through Ni Yan's ears. Hearing this voice so familiar to his heart, his soul began to tremble. He turned his head to look. If the person appearing before his eyes wasn't Si Yao, then who else could it be? She was wearing a white dress dotted with pink lace. Her hair was tied behind her back as her clear and charming eyes gazed on with concern. Her cheeks, appearing still somewhat childish, were brimming with youth and life. She was still as beautiful as ever. Ni Yan absent-mindedly recalled the high school reunion that had occurred 6 years after his graduation. At that time, Si Yao had become a successful businesswoman. She had worn a beautiful and enchanting ball dress. Time was indeed a wondrous thing, changing a pure and innocent young girl into a charming and beautiful woman. And at present, once again changing her back. After a whole lifetime, I've met you again. Perhaps this is fate. Our destinies rewinding like magnetic tape, placing us two once again at where we first encountered. Melodious music slowly began playing in his soul. Every single note so pleasant and beautiful to listen to. Ni Yan still kept the memories of the day he and Si Yao had first come across each other. It had mirrored this exact scene. His eyes were moist. Si Yao, I haven't seen you in such a long time. Are you still doing fine? In this lifetime, I'll never let you go again. Ah, your knee is badly scraped. And it's bleeding badly. Si Yao called out in alarm. After recalling that the first aid kit in her car still had a few bandages, she quickly ran back to retrieve them. Ni Yan watched as Si Yao returned to her vehicle. During his senior year, what he loved to do the most was follow her elegant little figure with his eyes. Glancing at her seductive figure, her knee-length skirt revealed snow-white skin that resembled exquisite jade. On that topic, Ni Yan's appearance also couldn't be considered too bad. Following his father's success, his financial circumstances had also become pretty good. He wasn't the least bit inferior to Si Yao. However, when facing her, he could never rouse up enough courage to interact with her. His state of mind during senior year was odd and hard to fathom. Looking back as an adult, he felt he truly was too immature at the time. Si Yao grabbed the bandages and walked over to Ni Yan's side. She then began disinfecting the wound with antiseptics. Moving with extreme care, she picked off the tiny bits of gravel with her delicate fingers. "How can you cry? You're already a grown boy. How could a little wound like this cause you to tear up? It's not a very good appearance. You know. Tilda." Si Yao smiled teasingly while using her thumb to massage Ni Yan's bruised knee. When she smiled, the corners of her mouth exposed her slight dimples, revealing a type of indescribably bright charm. "When I fell, there was just a little dust that got into my eyes." Ni Yan's cheeks became a little red as he absent-mindedly replied with an excuse. The real reason he had cried wasn't due to the injury on his knee in the slightest. It was Si Yao's appearance which caused him to feel as if boiling hot water had been poured over his head. His state of mind was in a chaotic mess. An overwhelming amount of bitterness and joy mixed together wanted to surge out of him. Si Yao's attention was single-mindedly focused on Ni Yan's bruised knee. Ni Yan raised his head and gazed at Si Yao's face as she leaned in towards him. Her skin, like flawless white jade, was tender and supple. A strand of black hair hung down as he gazed at the beautiful earrings that hung from her earlobes. In the past, when he and Si Yao were deskmates, he always liked to secretly peek at her during class time. Though no matter how much he looked, he felt he could never look enough. Si Yao was without a doubt the prettiest girl in their class. However, other classes had very pretty girls too. Ni Yan, on the other hand, firmly believed Si Yao was the most beautiful girl in the entire school. After their first encounter, Ni Yan had never forgotten her. Later on, when he entered his senior year of high school, he was surprised to discover the both of them were in the same class. Not only that, but they were also deskmates as well. He came to believe this occurrence was predestined. It wasn't until 10 years later that he came to understand. Even if two people were fated to be together, if one didn't properly seize their opportunity, they would miss their chance. By the time he became aware of this, it was already too late. "How could you come here all by yourself? This is a really dangerous area where a lot of criminals operate," Ni Yan said in a genuinely concerned tone. It truly was an area occupied by many criminal organizations. An especially dangerous place for a beautiful young girl like Si Yao to be alone. "Don't underestimate me. I'm a third-level black belt in Taekwondo. After I turn 21, I'll be able to advance onto the 4th level. If you don't believe me, then let me show you." Si Yao took up an open stance, then suddenly halted as her face turned dizzily red. She stalled and said, "Actually, never mind. I'm wearing a skirt today. But I really am super strong," Si Yao said innocently without the slightest trace of scheming. Ni Yan replied with a laugh. And after chatting with Si Yao for a while, he confirmed that this young lady in front of him was indeed Si Yao. The girl who was so sincere, lovable, lively, and carefree. Yet after graduating university and meeting up once again, That sort of lively innocence soon became something he could never see again. It turns out going through a stressful period of time would indefinitely change anyone. Si Yao began sizing Ni Yan up a bit. Compared to herself, he seemed to be younger than her by a few years. His height was also roughly the same as hers, appearing to be only around 170 centimeters in height. The clothes he wore were a little dirty, possibly from falling over just now. Appearance-wise, although he couldn't be regarded as handsome, he was passable. Only, she didn't seem to know why. But she felt an indescribable sort of familiarity and closeness towards Ni Yan. Unknowingly, they ended up chatting for quite a while. "What school are you from?" "From your appearance, it looks as though you should be studying in middle school, right?" Chia Yao felt Ni Yan was a little bit foolish and empty-headed. So silly it was slightly adorable. Not minding the ground while he was running. Many boys from middle school are foolish like this. They become a lot more mature by the time they reach high school though. Although Ni Yan was 18 years old right now, he had the wisdom of a 28-year-old. When he met with Si Yao once again, Ni Yan was no longer the confused, ignorant little boy he had been in the past. His spirit had been refined and tempered by the passage of time. He had become calm and collected. "Who said I'm in middle school? If it weren't for the country's child policy, my son would already be old enough to buy groceries himself." Ni Yan replied jokingly. "As a person, one shouldn't be so deadpan and boring. Your son? Buying groceries himself? Stop joking around." Ni Yan's words had caused Si Yao to burst out into laughter, causing her to giggle non-stop. "I'm 18. Are you really 18? You don't look like you're around my age," Si Yao said in surprise. Due to being a bit malnourished, Ni Yan's present height was evidently a bit short, around 165 centimeters tall. When his living conditions had improved later on, his height soared up to 180 centimeters by the time he had reached his senior year of high school. His current appearance still seemed that of a juvenile, and he really did look like a middle schooler. This was the reason why he had always looked a little depressed. The most unfortunate thing for him, as a 28-year-old, was unexpectedly being told he looked like a middle school student. However, he really did look baby-faced at present, so there was nothing that could be done. "This is because my face looks naturally younger compared to others. If you're young, you're young. You still won't admit it?" Si Yao replied giggling. She came to feel this Ni Yan was a pretty amusing person. All the boys in her class were always either shy when they met her, never knowing what to say, or haughty delinquents that brought her disgust. The two talked for quite a while. Ni Yan appeared very comfortable when conversing with Si Yao, occasionally teasing her with a few clever quips that made her laugh. Ni Yan gazed at Si Yao's smiling expression that was simply beautiful. It reminded him of the time he had graduated high school. He and Si Yao had been deskmates for a year, and he had always believed the two of them could never form any sort of connection. They were two people from completely different worlds. He continued to admire Si Yao in secret, gifting Si Yao whatever she asked for. However, he had never made a demand for Si Yao to remember a lowly person such as himself. Never did he expect that after graduation he would unexpectedly receive a gift from her. Perhaps he really had left an impression in Si Yao's heart. What appeared in the gift was a photograph of Si Yao as a 12-year-old. At the time, She was still a chubby little fat girl. It was a picture that would only be shared with someone she considered herself to be close to. After graduation, Ni Yan remained incapable of forgetting Si Yao, and both of them continued to stay in touch. After being reborn, Ni Yan would never again allow himself to miss his opportunity. Having once more encountered each other, Ni Yan's state of mind fell into somewhat of a daze. In his past life, and in his current life, he and Si Yao shared an unbreakable bond tied by fate. Her clear and limpid eyes stealthily glanced at Ni Yan's face, sizing him up. Although Ni Yan wasn't particularly handsome, even looking very ordinary at first, and despite looking very childish, he had a very indescribable calmness. Perhaps it has to do with his personality. My name is Ni Yan. Ni Yan. The Ni written with pair, shuang, and and the Yan written as word, Yan. In language, Yu Yan. Ni Yan said while looking at Si Yao eye to eye. Si Yao's charming face became flustered as she tried to avoid Ni Yan's gaze. I'm called Si Yao. Quote. Ni Yan shifted his gaze downwards, stopping at Si Yao's lips. They were a faint pink in color, soft with a glossy allure. The previous Ni Yan in his senior year of high school would absolutely never dare to gaze at Si Yao's face in such a way. He had only dared to stealthily sneak glances at Si Yao's beautiful face from the corner of his eye. My father is still waiting for me, so I'll be leaving first. I felt very happy chatting with you today. But remember, you can only remove your bandage by tomorrow. You definitely can't remove it any earlier. Si Yao didn't feel assured, so she repeatedly warned Ni Yan as she stood up. Ni Yan attempted to move his knee a bit, and noticed that he was able to do so without issue. The wound was only superficial. I'm all right. I can already walk again. So you should go back now. Also, thank you for today, Ni Yan replied, despite wanting to talk with Si Yao for a little while longer. He ended up walking back to the curb. They would be studying at the same high-class city school in the future, and he would have plenty of opportunities to get to know her then. I'll be leaving first then. Quote. Bye-bye, Ni Yan replied smiling, as he began strolling away. As he walked up to the pharmacy, he couldn't help but feel a little sentimental in his heart. After briefly meeting one another, they parted once again. Si Yao sat in her hovercar and started it back up. Ni Yan turned his head and glanced back. But by that time Si Yao's hovercar had already departed. They had met in the past like this, completely by accident. However, it didn't go as smoothly as this last time, as the previous him hadn't even been able to form a single coherent word in front Si Yao. The Si Yao back then had wrapped up his leg with a bandage and left right after. Though it was this chance encounter, caused by his carelessness, that allowed Si Yao to leave an inerasable mark in his heart. It was to the extent where he had never forgotten her. Reincarnating is such a wonderful thing. Everything could once again start afresh. Ni Yan then came to think. His everything could very likely be snatched away by Cao Zhu in a couple of years down the road. In his mind rose a strong sense of urgency. He had to become much more powerful to be able to protect everything that he held dear. Thinking about Cao Zhu, Ni Yan's heart gradually grew colder. This was a loathing that penetrated deep into one's marrow, to the extent where he felt not the slightest hesitation in putting a bullet through his enemy's head. However, for now, All he was currently able to do was seize his opportunity and enter Conviction as quickly as possible, to set up an early foundation in the game. Conviction was unlike any other game. Naturally, because it was humanity's second world, the game had transformed the entire globe. Ni Yan could obtain what he wanted by playing Conviction. At the pharmacy, he bought a few packets of cold medicine. As he swallowed it down, he immediately felt his body relax as his fever receded. At present, he felt the medicine's effects were very satisfactory. After he finished up in the pharmacy, he walked over to the department store in the area. He planned to buy a virtual reality helmet. Every department store had a dazzling lineup of products within. They had many kinds of appliances and devices. So many, they couldn't be counted. For the most part, they were all smart devices. There were some products Ni Yan wasn't even able to name. This place had no sales representatives. You only need swipe your card and you'd be able to receive whatever you wanted to buy. Half a day had passed since Ni Yan left his house. And finally, he had reached the section where they sold virtual reality helmets. They were displayed one by one, stacked on top of the wall. It was a feast for the eyes. There were 3 entry models differentiated by thousands of styles, patterns, and designs. The lowest price was 1,300 credits, while the most expensive reached upwards of 1,200,000 credits. The higher the price, the better the configuration. You get what you pay for. And at present Ni Yan could only afford the cheapest configuration. Besides the currently available virtual reality helmets, there were also limited edition ones that could be purchased only by making a reservation. Their prices reached upwards of 60 million credits. Regarding these helmets, at present, Ni Yan could only wish for them in his thoughts. Nothing more. Ni Yan swiped his card at the register. He had chosen a light blue-colored helmet and furthermore bound it to his identity. Once his identity was registered to the helmet, it could only be used by him from then on. Conviction had only been released 7 days ago. Thus the highest leveled player was probably only level 5. So he still had plenty of time to catch up. After having been reborn, he should be able to effortlessly obliterate any opponent in his way in a grand and imposing manner. Step up to the highest peak, and all mountains below will be seen as insignificant. Chapter 3 Haggling. Ni Yan glanced back at the clock. It was already 3:30. Conviction's game servers were open from 5 in the afternoon to 9 in the morning. 16 hours total. In this way, it wouldn't be a hindrance to the common person's work schedule. Thus, everyone's game time was more or less equivalent. Hence, it made it unlikely for any single player to create a large disparity in level compared to the rest of the player base. In addition, Conviction's virtual reality technology exceeded perfection. As a result, it gained increasing popularity, eventually becoming popular all over the globe. It gradually transformed into an absolute necessity in everyone's life. This was the world that had become dominated by virtual reality technology. It had become a perfect system. 5 months later, Conviction would complete this system by connecting virtual currency with the real-world economy, thus completely merging into humanity's livelihood. With such a high rate of player retention, the player base was able to grow to a tremendous amount. It spurred the increasing consumption of virtual reality in the rest of the world. The amount of time the world spent playing Conviction every year was so astronomical. It was to the extent that it surpassed the amount of time they spent in reality. The emergence of numerous new consumer groups caused the creation of a great number of service industries, a vast majority of which targeted the professional gaming community. Almost every financial group had established a presence in Conviction. Following the establishment of his father's business, after the company had produced decent earnings, Ni Yan's father also began participating in Conviction's rising popularity. He put up a large sum of money into the game as well. Though in the end, due to suffering a crushing defeat, it resulted in the company and its assets being brought to ruin. This allowed Cao Zhu the opportunity to seize even more of an advantage. Ni Yan absolutely wouldn't allow such a situation to occur again. Establishing an early presence in Conviction was essential. And it was crucial that he mustn't fail. Ni Yan needed to first help his father by paving the road ahead. Only when his father begins injecting funds into Conviction will he be able to establish an uninterrupted chain of funding and take the first steps towards success. This would prevent any problems from arising in the future. Ni Yan made a stop and ate out for dinner, spending $30. By the time he had arrived home, it was already nearing 5 o'clock. After putting on his helmet, he calmly waited for Conviction to boot up. 12 minutes had passed. The helmet's display gradually illuminated, revealing the time to be 5 p.m. Abruptly, a lively jingle began playing, echoing through his ears. The tune felt familiar. It had been something he'd heard countless times in the past. He never felt any particular attachment towards it. However, it currently felt strangely pleasant to his ears. System. Do you wish to create an account? Yes. Quote. System. Please select your country. There were 3 factions you could choose from when entering Conviction. The first was the righteous faction who guarded the light. This faction consisted of the Viridian, Ge Lan, Empire and Satrine, Satn, Empire. The Viridian Empire was a nation ruled by humans and governed by an elder parliament. The Satrine Empire, on the other hand, was a nation formed from the alliance between dwarves, beastmen, and elves. The second was the evil faction who guarded the darkness. It was ruled by a tyrant who reigned over both the devils and undead. For people who didn't enjoy conflict, there was a third faction which was neutral and ruled by the Irenic giant tribe. In the past, Ni Yan had chosen the Tempest Thief class of the Viridian Empire, which meant he was also quite familiar with the landscape of the Empire. Furthermore, he was well acquainted with the Tempest Thief's skills and class quests. If he had chosen a different starting nation, then the superior advantage he had gained from being reborn wouldn't be worth much in the end. Ni Yan held a special type of affection for the Tempest Thief class. After all, he had dedicated nearly a decade of painstaking effort into it. The level 180 thief represented the height of his glory. When he considered all these factors, he selected the Tempest Thief as his class once again, just as he had in the past. System. You've chosen to start in the Viridian Empire. System. You've selected Tempest Thief as your class. System. Please name your character. Ni Yan. Nirvana Flame. Ni Yan chose the same name as he had in the past, Nirvana Flame. Though these words were pronounced in the same way as his real name when they were spoken, they presented the meaning of a phoenix entering nirvana and being reborn. System. Successfully created character name. The character Nirvana Flame has been created. The game automatically blurred the player's true appearance after entering. Then, the system would conduct minor alterations to the face of the player's character. Under normal circumstances, the appearance of the player's character and the player's actual appearance were vastly different. It would actually be quite difficult to recognize a player in real life. However, the actual beauty or ugliness of the character was more or less equivalent to how it would be outside the game. Ni Yan opened his status window and took a look at his own stats. Character: Nirvana Flame. Level: 0. Strength: 2. Dexterity: 2. Intelligence: 2. Physique: 2. Awareness: 2. Charisma: 2. Health: 100 and 100ths. Rage: 0 100ths. Defense: 2. Defend 20%. Attack: 3. Hit rate 10. Attack speed: 5. Resilience: 1. Magic resistance: 0. Reflex: 2. Willpower: 0. Balance: 5. Focus: 5. Jump: 5. Short 0.9 meters. Medium 1.5 meters. Long 3.0 meters. Stealth: 0. Skill slot empty. Movement speed: 5. Weight modifier 0. Cloak: 5. Search: 5. Weight: 0.60ths of a pound. Weight modifier 0. Light load: 0 to 20 pounds. Agile movement: medium load: 21 to 30 pounds. Regular movement: heavy load: 31 to 50 pounds. Slow movement: human. Humans possess knowledge that many other races desire. Intelligence +3 every 5 levels. Thief class trait 1. Gain a trap exemption bonus every 5 levels. Thief class trait 2. Gain +30% attack when attacking an enemy from behind. Human thief. Excellent intelligence allows human thieves to be proficient in employing all kinds of tools and enchanted items. Masteries: beginner evasion, beginner dagger, beginner cloaking, cloak +2, beginner marksman, bow and crossbow, beginner adept hands. These were the base stats for every type of thief in the beginning of the game. Furthermore, at level 0, the system gives you 5 stat points and 1 skill point. Ni Yan took a glance at his status window. When he had chosen the Tempest Thief profession in the past, he had added 1 point in strength, 2 points in agility, and 2 points in physique in order to make himself more durable. In turn, it caused him to have a very weak attack power and slow attack speed during the initial stages of the game, and wasted a lot of his time trying to level. In reality, thieves never required a lot of HP at the start of the game. Thinking about this failure and all the time he had wasted, Ni Yan couldn't help but drop his shoulders down and sigh many times in the past, wishing he could delete and restart again. This time around, he wouldn't repeat such a disastrous mistake again. This time, he added 3 points into strength and 2 points in dexterity. He had concluded this was the optimum ratio, after taking into account the leveling habits of his previous life. He took another glance at the status window after allocating all of his stat points. Attack 5 right pointing arrow 6. Hit rate 10.0 right pointing arrow 10.6. Movement speed 5.0 right pointing arrow 5.4. Attack speed 5 right pointing arrow 5.6. There were also class masteries. Regarding these thief-class masteries, a majority of thieves from the human race would choose to add their first mastery point into either evasion, weapon mastery, or cloaking. Ni Yan was also prepared to add his first mastery point into weapon mastery. But he stopped suddenly. After a moment of careful consideration, he decided to add his first mastery point into marksman. Beginner marksman, right pointing arrow, intermediate marksman. Rapid reloading +3. Firing range +3. Attack when using crossbow, bow +3. Ignore level +3. Thief class modifier +1. Class masteries were divided into 5 levels. Beginner right-pointing arrow, intermediate right-pointing arrow, advanced right-pointing arrow, expert right-pointing arrow. Specialist 1 could not advance further after reaching specialist. However, there were many types of class masteries, and different class were allowed to upgrade different class masteries. Human thieves were proficient in a variety of tools and enchanted items. Bows and crossbows belonged to this category, which is why those with intermediate marksman received an additional attack bonus when they were used. After assigning his stats, Ni Yan's scenery shifted and he soon appeared at the transfer point within Kalor Luo'er city. Encompassing the surroundings were rows upon rows of towering buildings. Every building in Kalor City was pure white and possessed an incomparable brilliance. At the center of the city stood a white spire which towered through the skies. Not too far from the spire was an equally magnificent pure white sculpture that stood several 100 meters in height, holding onto a magician's scepter. It had a solemn and dignified expression. This was, of course, the protector of the Viridian Empire, Jebiah the Great. People were arriving and departing as they moved through the main streets, which were bustling with noise and excitement. Evening in reality was actually early morning within the game. The light of daybreak enveloped and warmed the top of every building as if a blanket of silver. White light had been laid over all of Kalor City. Kalor City was the capital of the Viridian Empire. It was a floating city that lay suspended over the Kalor prairies. From the city, numerous transfer points connected to various other cities, towns, and villages, selling top-rate white-grade dagger. Attack +2. It's better than the novice dagger. Attack +1. And only costs 2 copper coins. Only 3 left in stock until they're all sold out. A level 3 arcane mage had currently set up shop near the transfer point. Many beginners were crowding in front of his store. Every new person who enters the game receives 10 coppers in their inventory as their starting capital. Even though they felt their hearts ache, many people still purchased one of these daggers for the sake of training a little bit faster in the initial stages of the game. Ni Yan snorted in disdain. On the map, the same daggers could be found in level 1 to 5 villages being sold for only 1 copper. Furthermore, level 0 players could easily walk up to a transfer point and teleport to one of these villages free of charge. They could purchase one of these daggers from an NPC and then come back, all within 2 or 3 minutes. In his previous life, he had also foolishly bought one of these daggers, only to find out he had been cheated later on. The nearby towns each had their own stores. The small town of Link had a clothing shop. Joseph Town had a hat and shoe store. And Lock Town had a shop that sold weapons. Ni Yan teleported back and forth 3 times through the transfer points. He spent 6 coppers to switch out his defenseless beginner equipment for better gear. Each piece of equipment gave him an increase in defense. He gained 1 to 2 defense each from equipping his new footwear, headgear, shoulder guards, and leg protectors. He also gained an additional 2 to 3 defense from equipping cloth armor. These were all lessons he had learned from his past experiences. Taking a look at his defense, it had now become 8 to 13. If beginner thieves at level 2 or 3 weren't resourceful enough in keeping their equipment up with their levels, they would also have this little bit of defense. After taking a stroll around the marketplace, he discovered a level 3 paladin selling thief-class stealth skill books. He was selling 6 books for 6 coppers each in his store. Many of the low-level thieves could only gaze from afar due to the price of these skill books being so expensive. The paladin had the appearance of a man in his 20s. His stature was tall and robust. It would have been pretty good if he had chosen to be a warrior. But he was still passable as a paladin. Paladins were guardians of the Temple of Light. They could learn holy skills passed down from the temple, such as certain offensive enchantments or healing skills. Furthermore, they had decent close combat skills and could provide supportive party buffs for teammates at the same time. They were a pretty balanced class in every aspect. Silencing paladins were paladins that could learn silence, a divine skill that could suppress mages, priests, and other mage-type classes. How much for this stealth skill book? Ni Yan asked as he bent down and picked up the skill book from the cloth mat that was spread out on the ground. The stealth skill was an essential skill for a beginner thief. Luckily, though, the stealth skill book had a very high drop rate from the various monster spawn points, so it wasn't too expensive. You've already seen it. The price is 6 coppers, the paladin replied, pursing his lips into a frown. Aren't you just trying to rip people off? A silencing paladin like you can easily hunt down the fallen shamans around Linktown. You could easily farm out 6 skills books in a day, and still not lose any health. It's definitely much easier to make money this way compared to farming goblins. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Selling at such a high price? 3 coppers. And not a copper more. Ni Yan haggled down the price to half. How could it be as easy as you described? Do you even know much I spend on potions a day? If I sold it to you for 3 coppers, I basically wouldn't be making any money. My lowest offer is 5 coppers. The paladin was shocked by Ni Yan's words and had taken quite a while to reply. He definitely wasn't the type of person who was calculating and skillful at deceiving others. At a glance, this new player in front was definitely a well-informed customer. Definitely not someone to be easily fooled. That's because the place you're farming monsters at is inefficient. If you farm the fallen shamans at these coordinates, 22,385.21338.23329, you can easily get at least 10 skill books a day. Not only that, you won't waste a lot of money on potions as well. 3 coppers. Not a single copper more. If you don't want to sell, then I'll just take my leave. Ni Yan had inspected this paladin. He had a squarish jawline with slightly grown-out stubble, and his appearance didn't seem too despicable. Chapter 4 Flying Stone. Wait a minute. What did you say those coordinate numbers were? Does that place truly drop many stealth skill books? The paladin hurriedly asked. After hearing the manner in which Ni Yan had spoken in, he somewhat began to believe this passing thief. 1. The location is near the fallen shaman camp, but it's still a fair distance away. The area should be absolutely safe. After farming for around 20 minutes, a fallen shaman should spawn once every 5 seconds. A silencing paladin like you can train there up until they hit level 5. Brat. You're still too inexperienced. If this great master were to casually hand out even a little bit of game advice, you'd be able to receive endless benefits. Ni Yan shamelessly boasted while patting the paladin's shoulder. How about it? Give me another discount? Quote. 4 coppers. I won't go any lower. The paladin was still skeptical about Ni Yan's words. However, he was indeed able to obtain around 6 skill books a day by farming the fallen shamans outside of the fallen shaman camp. Just as Ni Yan had said. Though this fallen shaman camp, he had gone there once before and nearly lost his life. The location in the coordinates Ni Yan provided should definitely lead him right outside of that same camp. Ni Yan's words completely matched this information. So it probably shouldn't be false. The paladin muttered to himself and began pondering. Should I head over to those coordinates and take a look myself? 3 coppers. If you're not willing, then I'll be taking my leave. However, if you're willing to give me this book as a gift, I'll give you some more valuable information regarding the fallen shaman camp. Ni Yan gave an incentive. After seeing the paladin still appearing hesitant, he turned his body and prepared to depart. Ni Yan was embarrassingly short on funds. He didn't have a lot of money to spend on the stealth skill book. However, it was still essential for every thief during the early stages of the game. This truly won't do. I'll have to put it off for later. At least until I can manage to get a bit of money grinding off level 1 mobs in the beginning area. Wait. Hold up. Seeing Ni Yan about to leave, the paladin hurriedly called out to him. He hastily picked up a stealth skill book from the little shop he had set up and said, "Isn't it merely a single stealth skill book? I can easily farm out 6 of them in a day. Here, I'll give this to you as a present. Now tell me, what's information you have on this fallen shaman camp?" It just so happened that he and his companions would be setting off to train in that area shortly. Thus, he really wanted to be as informed as possible about the area. In the paladin's eyes, Ni Yan certainly did appear to be a very knowledgeable person. Ni Yan glanced back at him. This paladin does seem to be an honest person. I was able to secure a stealth skill book, and I didn't even need to spend a single penny. Recalling this, Ni Yan was in a great mood. Seeing as you're being sincere, don't head over to the coordinates I just gave you. If you really did head over there looking to train, then not even within 5 minutes passing, 3 fallen shaman leaders would appear. A single cast of their fireball would cause an explosion that would kill you instantly, Ni Yan casually informed. Upon hearing these words, the paladin instantly broke out in a cold sweat as he felt a great chill run through his heart. When Ni Yan informed him that those coordinates were a good place to farm, he truly intended to head over there and try his luck. He never expected that not only were these coordinates false, they were also dangerous as well. If he hadn't hurriedly called Ni Yan back, one could only imagine the consequences. It would have truly been an injustice if he had been killed in such a way. Ni Yan was simply too cunning, not even raising a single finger, and he entrapped someone. Originally, the paladin still felt a bit regretful giving away the stealth skill book. However, at present, he became incredibly overjoyed. There was basically no comparison between his life and a single stealth skill book. Dying in the game would result in losing a level along with losing a random piece of equipment. It turns out being a kind and sincere really does have its own benefits. Noticing the paladin gazing at him with such an aggrieved expression, Ni Yan flashed a slight smile and said, "The real coordinates are 2. You can farm out 10 stealth skill books from there. The spawn rate is pretty good too. So it's definitely a good place to train. I'm not lying to you this time around. This is my way of expressing gratitude for gifting me this beginner skill book. Then, I guess this could be considered your payment? As for the Fallen Shaman camp, naturally, it's a 20-person instance. There's a requisite of 72 defense for warriors. Regarding paladins and priests, the requisites are also similarly high. Paladins must have a willpower of 8 and priests are required to learn the heal skill. The strength of their heal must also reach 30 points. Not only this, but when entering the camp, you must bring an ample supply of health and mana potions. The requirements are too high. Would I still be able to enter if my willpower is only 7 points? The heal skill books are also too expensive as well. The influx of new players has caused the skill book to skyrocket to an extremely expensive price. It's to the point where it has no set market value. Our party consists of only 1 priest. And the reason we want to enter the Fallen Shaman camp is because we need to obtain the heal skill book for him. So tell me, if we don't meet these requirements, can we still enter the Fallen Shaman camp? The paladin asked. Entering is definitely possible. However, you'll need to use a special method to enter. What kind of special method? The paladin asked curiously. Ni Yan smiled wordlessly. In the future, he would most likely enter the Fallen Shaman camp as well. If others wanted him to inform them about this special method, then they must be willing to pay a sufficient price. All party quests are divided into 5 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, expert, and specialist. If you guys are unsure of yourselves, then you should select the easy difficulty. Speaking of which, it really shouldn't be too difficult. If you guys don't meet the requirements, then you simply need to just keep upgrading. That's all. Ni Yan looked at him meaningfully. He can't possibly think that a single stealth skill book would allow him to candidly obtain the special method for entering the Fallen Shaman camp. Could he? Although Ni Yan was only level 0, he still gave off the appearance of a professional. The paladin began weighing his thoughts and in the end, he still trusted Ni Yan's words. Thank you. The paladin sincerely expressed his gratitude. Ni Yan couldn't help smiling. The person before him was forced to give him a skill book free of charge. And he still thanked him in the end. This was truly adorable. In his previous life, Ni Yan was also such a sincere type of person. Only after experiencing many difficulties and setbacks, he slowly became cunning and sly. Although he felt this paladin was very stupid, Ni Yan had a good impression of him. While tossing the skill book in his hands, he muttered, "We each take what we need." Just as Ni Yan turned around and started to leave, the paladin called out to him, "Expert, what's your name? Why don't we add each other as friends? That way, if I ever meet up with a problem I can't solve, I'll still be able to ask you for advice." "Sure, but it'll cost you. I'm not one who offers a free service," Ni Yan replied. He definitely didn't want to give out information for free. "That's not a problem," the paladin replied straightforwardly. "All right then. My name is Nirvana Flame. If this person was able to give a sufficient price, Ni Yan felt there would be no harm in sharing some information. He'll just consider it earning a bit of extra income. My name is Flying Stone. Though all my friends just call me Stone, the paladin named Stone replied. He had already considered Ni Yan to be one of his friends. That's fine. I have a few matters to attend to. So, I'll be leaving first. See you later. Ni Yan said his goodbyes to Stone and walked over to the transport point. He wanted to learn the stealth skill quickly. A thief's defense and health were too low when compared to other close combat professions. In the initial stages of the game, he would only be able to train on the weak mobs that were the same level as him. Not only that, but he could only fight them one-on-one too. If he were to face a more powerful mob or perhaps two or more monsters, then his only option would be to flee for his life. Thieves were unlike warriors, who possessed the ability to fight two monsters of the same level. If the warrior had decent equipment, then they'd be able to face off against three or more monsters. Therefore, unless a thief was training in a party, their leveling from beginning to end was much slower when compared to warriors, mages, and other similar professions. Currently, the highest level player among them was level 5, while the highest level thief was only level 4. At the start, thieves must continuously make money in order to buy skill books. Only after getting plenty of skills would their strengths finally begin to emerge, which would additionally cause their training speed to gradually increase. At present, Ni Yan had gained the first ability in his skill bar, Stealth. Stealth was the bread and butter skill for all thieves. Their most basic and most powerful skill. Ni Yan transported over to Teleki town. This was one of the most ordinary towns within the Kalor Prairies. It was an NPC settlement. The houses were made of clay and mud, which exuded prairie-like characteristics. There were many level 2 players in the area. Hence, the place was bustling with movements. The monsters surrounding these small settlements ranged from level 1 to 10. There were level 2 to 3 players everywhere in small towns. They were either trading goods or looking to form parties to hunt monsters. The streets were filled with noise and excitement. When walking down the streets, one could easily feel a bit claustrophobic. If he recalled correctly, there was a silver treasure chest near the Wildcat region of Telek town. In his previous life, he had discovered it while farming monsters in that region. He had obtained a high-quality thief skill book from the chest. However, it was an area that contained level 5 monsters. Fortunately, no one should have reached that location yet. When teams formed parties to level, players would usually split into groups of 3 or 4. Otherwise, the experience definitely wouldn't be worth it. If 10 or more were to form a party to hunt, then the experience gained would be too minuscule after being split. In general, 3 to 5 people in a party were able to train in an area where level 5 monsters spawned. However, this was also rarely seen. Treasure chests were graded from white treasure chests, silver treasure chests, gold treasure chests, dark gold treasure chests, legendary treasure chests, etc. The higher ranked the treasure chest, the better the items that would come out of it. The items inside the chests were set, so once they were removed, the chest would disappear. Although he was only level 0. After obtaining the stealth skill, Ni Yan had come up with a few ideas on how to obtain that silver treasure chest. 1. 21,338.23329. 2. 21,383.23359. Chapter 5 Vital Strike. Towns contained only the most rudimentary of buildings. General stores, low-level equipment shops, personal storages, etc. Even NPCs were sparse in number. And these NPCs were quest givers. For the most part, these simple quests consisted of gathering and collecting various items, hunting and killing an animal to collect its fur, collecting herbs, ores, and so on. After completing these quests, one would be rewarded with either money or experience. After arriving at the general store, Ni Yan went forward and bought 3 basic health potions. One potion would restore upwards of 30 health, and each potion was priced at a single copper. General stores only offered basic health potions. Middle or higher-tiered potions could only be purchased from an alchemist. Following the purchase of his 3 potions, only a single copper remained in Ni Yan's pockets. Ni Yan walked outside and went out of the town's boundaries. After leaving the town, he hurriedly rushed over to the treasure chest's spawn point. If he met a monster, he would make a detour around it and maintain his distance. The place he was heading towards was a level 5 monster area. At present, with his current level, the danger was very high. However, with his experience currently at level 0 to 0.00%, even if he died, he wouldn't lose any experience. Ni Yan passed through 2 level 1 monster zones, a level 3 monster zone, and a level 4 monster zone. After 4 minutes, Ni Yan had finally arrived at the monster zone where level 5 wildcats spawned. After surveying the surrounding area, he saw dense pastures and lush grass that could reach up to one's waist gazing at a distant area in the dense pastures. He saw a tall willow rising above the vegetation. It appeared to be especially lofty and majestic as it occupied its own space within the pasture. The silver treasure chest wasn't far from this location. Ni Yan's heart began to tense up with nervousness as he grew closer. At his current level, the level 5 wildcats in this area weren't monsters that Ni Yan was capable of dealing with. Occasionally 1 or 2 wildcats would pass through the area, and Ni Yan would hurriedly conceal himself. Thieves possessed a passive profession skill which raised their ability to conceal themselves. Once they went into hiding, it wouldn't be easy for other lifeforms to detect them. At the same time, he was still able to use his stealth skill. Ni Yan began calculating the level difference formula for stealth in his head. After using stealth, the safe distance between him and a wildcat should be about 2 meters. In other words, if he went within 2 meters of a wildcat while he was in stealth, he would be discovered. Between 2 and 3 meters was the buffer zone where he could possibly be discovered. Beyond 3 meters he was at an absolutely safe distance. Having spent over a decade playing the thief profession in his previous life, Ni Yan's usage of these thief skills had long been tempered to perfection. In addition, using his vision to estimate distance also wasn't too hard of a feat. Suddenly, the underbrush in the distance began to tremble and stir with movement. Ni Yan's complexion rapidly changed as he quickly went into hiding by activating stealth. A wildcat that was as large as a German shepherd pounced out of the thickets. Its sharp eyes surveyed the surroundings, but it didn't discover anything strange. As it passed through the open space that lay ahead, it entered into another patch of grass and disappeared. Only when he was assured the wildcat had gone far away did Ni Yan dare to continue moving forward. There was a stretch of open space in a 10-meter radius around the willow. A silver-white chest quietly lay at the base of the willow tree. The nearby area had 6 to 7 wildcats roaming around freely. To clear out these level 5 wildcats would require a team of at least 20 level 3 players. It would not be easy getting a hold of this chest. Ni Yan observed the movements of these wildcats within the thickets of grass, as he attempted to find a safe route to the willow tree. Their movements appeared to have a fixed pattern. After observing for a while, Ni Yan removed all the equipment from his body and stored them in his inventory. He then re-equipped his defenseless beginner equipment. If his beginner equipment were to be sold to an NPC store, they wouldn't be worth even a single copper. Simply put, they were trash. Even if one were to throw them on the ground, no one would bother picking them up. Dying in conviction would result in the loss of a level. Additionally, a random piece of equipment would also be dropped upon death. If the new equipment he had just recently bought dropped unexpectedly, then that would truly be wasteful. However, if the beginner equipment dropped, he wouldn't care. He was only equipping it to temporarily to cover his body anyway. While using his stealth skill, Ni Yan slowly crept towards the willow tree. He walked for approximately 10 seconds. Before suddenly stopping and holding his breath. A wildcat was making its way around Ni Yan's left flank, within approximately 2 meters. After waiting for 6 seconds, Ni Yan pressed onwards once again, carefully exercising control over his distance between each wildcat. Gradually, the distance between him and the chest shortened. Ni Yan's heart rate sped up once again. He understood that as a level 0, if he succeeded in grabbing this skill book, then it would be immensely helpful in the future. 2 wildcats began moving towards Ni Yan's location. Ni Yan quickly halted, but the wildcats continued their advance. Fortunately, the distance between them was still about 2 meters apart. Ni Yan was frightened badly as he felt a cold sweat run down his back. Stealth had a total duration of 2 minutes, and time was ticking away. Knowing that stealth's effects would end within 32 seconds, Ni Yan's state of mind began to fluctuate. There's not enough time. Ni Yan slightly accelerated his pace. Not far from where Ni Yan was located, a wildcat moved slightly. It became aware of Ni Yan's location almost immediately. After locking its eyes onto Ni Yan, the wildcat exposed its sharp teeth and let out a hoarse growl. Not good. I was discovered. The wildcat moved, pouncing towards Ni Yan. The wildcat's sudden attack was quick, and Ni Yan's movement speed meant that he was basically incapable of keeping up. However, Ni Yan still managed to sidestep out of the way of the wildcat's attack by relying on his reaction speed, something he had developed during his past life. The basic movements for a character were sidestepping, rolling, jumping, etc. Players were able to utilize these movements to dodge attacks, as long as it was within the capabilities of the system. The sharp claws of the wildcat swiped through empty air, missing Ni Yan's throat by just an inch. Just as Ni Yan had dodged, 2 more wildcats appeared and pounced at him from the sides. One of them clawed at him from the back, while the other bit into his arm. I'm finished. Under these circumstances, using health potions would be useless. -68. -32. 2 damage values floated over Ni Yan's head. He collapsed to the ground as his health fell to zero. The scenery changed, and Ni Yan found himself resurrected at the cemetery in Telik town. His failure was a result of using stealth too early. When stealth's duration was nearly up, he had become impatient and mistakes were made. This was the root cause that led him to failure. Ni Yan summed up all the causes of his failure and continued forward. As he glanced at the equipment on his body, he noticed that his arm guards had been dropped. However, it was only a piece of beginner equipment. Even if it dropped, it wouldn't be too alarming. As for losing experience, it didn't matter because he was still at level 0 to 0.00%. He had already created a plan in case he ended up dying. Which was why he dared to venture into an area with level 5 monsters. Ni Yan set off once more. After he had left the boundaries of Telik town, he went back over to where the wildcats spawned. Once again, Ni Yan arrived at that open space. He soon discovered slight changes in the movement paths of the wildcats. He had led the wildcats near the chest before he died, and they continued to remain close by where he fell. Obtaining the silver treasure chest had just become a much more difficult task. The wildcats were constantly roaming about in the area. Ni Yan began studying their movement again. He could possibly brave death by drawing these wildcats away. Then, he could resurrect, use stealth to easily slip the past, and get to the chest afterward. He ended stealth. Gradually, his figure emerged about 3 meters away from the wildcats. 5 wildcats in the surrounding area simultaneously discovered him and began their pursuit. Ni Yan made a mad dash away from the area, but his movement speed was slow compared to the wildcats. Soon, they quickly caught up with him. One wildcat pounced forward, causing Ni Yan to fall to the ground. The other wildcats soon encircled him and went in for the kill. After a flash of white light, Ni Yan once again resurrected at the cemetery in Telik town. This time, his leg guard had dropped. He once more set out of the town, rushing back to plunder the treasure after resurrecting. With the passage of 10 minutes, Ni Yan had once again reached the open clearing. The wildcats were now some distance farther from the treasure chest as he calculated their movements in his head. Ni Yan's eyes lit up. There shouldn't be any problems this time around. Ni Yan activated stealth and approached the silver treasure chest. He advanced for more than 20 seconds before stopping in place after noticing 2 wildcats coming up from behind. They came close to Ni Yan's location, before gradually walking away. All the wildcats in the area were rather far away from Ni Yan, at about a distance of approximately 5 meters. When he confirmed that he was finally safe, Ni Yan accelerated his pace and quickly arrived at the silver chest. Stealth still had a remaining duration of 36 seconds. 6 seconds more than he had initially anticipated. Ni Yan crouched down to open the chest while still using stealth. Opening the chest would not cancel the skill system. Opening chest. Estimated completion 20%, 50%. A wildcat in the vicinity walked towards Ni Yan. It neared a little over 2 meters before eventually stopping. Ni Yan's pulse unconsciously sped up. Calm. Must remain calm. He had to constantly console himself in his head before his pulse finally calmed down. The wildcat glanced around for a short while, but eventually turned around and left after not detecting anything. Ni Yan's body eased up and he let out a sigh of relief. System. Chest successfully opened. Time taken 27.0s. Ni Yan opened the chest and began feeling around inside. When his hand came into contact with a book, his heart abruptly jumped. This is it. Taking the book out, he looked it over. Skill book. Vital strike. Skill description. Thieves can cause additional damage by attacking an enemy's vitals. Required action. Requires weapon. Skill attribute. Hitting a target's vitals causes 5% additional damage, marking the target with a damage debuff. Skill cooldown. 30s. User restriction. Thief, Warrior, Paladin. Can be learned by any faction. Indeed, this was the Vital Strike skill book. This was the best skill he was capable of learning at level 0. This was what he had worked so hard to obtain. After Ni Yan grabbed the book, it became a ray of white light. Glancing at his skill bar, he noticed that another skill had appeared. Vital Strike. Following Ni Yan's removal of the Vital Strike skill book, the silver chest began to gradually fade away before disappearing without a trace. It's all settled. Hey, I can return to town for free too. As Stealth's duration ended, Ni Yan's figure slowly emerged. The few wildcats in the area immediately discovered him and attacked. Ni Yan didn't have any experience to lose, so he was planning on dying and resurrecting in the town to avoid having to run back. Ni Yan peacefully awaited his fate. Once again, Ni Yan died and returned to the town cemetery. This time, his novice gloves dropped. However, compared to the Vital Strike skill book, the loss was negligible. By obtaining Vital Strike, his training speed would increase greatly. Chapter 6 Making Preparations. Ni Yan wanted to proceed forward with the second step of his training plan. However, he required 20 coppers in order to do so. Earning money while simultaneously training at a high speed. This is the only way to be efficient. Ni Yan thought for a moment, then began running deeper into Telik Town. Coordinates. 1 Telik Town. NPC. Hunter Klaus. Quest. Collect 50 giant silver dust rat skulls. Coordinates. 2 NPC. Farmer Ender. Quest. Kill 50 giant silver dust rats. Coordinates. 3 Telik Town Outskirts. Hidden NPC. Alchemist Oa. Quest. Collect 21 giant silver dust rat tails. Ni Yan found 2 common NPCs and 3 hidden NPCs that handed out quests related to killing giant silver dust rats. The coordinates for the hidden NPCs were provided in a strategy guide from his previous life. Countless players had come to experience great difficulty in finding these hidden NPCs because they were unaware of these coordinates. After he had received 5 quests, Ni Yan ran out of Telik Town and began heading towards the area where giant silver dust rats spawned. Giant silver dust rats were a species of immensely large rodents that possessed a silver ashen gray coat. Their builds slightly exceeded that of a water buffalo's, and they appeared similar to small moving hills when they roamed about. However, their movements were quite sluggish, and their attack wasn't all that high. Giant silver dust rats. Level 1. Health. 100 and 100ths. The game's servers had already been up and running for a little over a week, and the vast majority of players have already reached level 2 or 3. Hence, many of them had already moved on to hunt in higher-leveled regions. As such, only a sparse few players were still training in this level 1 area. Ni Yan moved quickly after discovering a giant silver dust rat. He attacked. leaving several stab marks on its back. -21, -20, -21. 3 damage values appeared, floating above the giant silver dust rat's head. The giant silver dust rat retaliated by turning its head to attack Ni Yan. Before it could, though, Ni Yan activated Vital Strike and stabbed the giant silver dust rat in the eye. System. Vital Strike successful. Attack plus 5%, resulting in additional damage dealt. -38. Another damage value floated over the giant silver dust rat's head. The giant dust rat let out a miserable squeak and immediately fell to the ground. Not bad. Vital Strike is pretty decent. Ni Yan collected the giant rat skull that had been dropped as loot. Vital Strike's cooldown was 30 seconds, giving Ni Yan just enough time to seek out another giant silver dust rat. After finding an area where giant silver dust rats spawned rather quickly, Ni Yan began to idly grind monsters. Numerous giant silver dust rats were constantly defeated and fell to the ground. Ni Yan's experience bar gradually rose. 1%, 2%, 10%. After about 2 hours, Ni Yan had slain a little over 200 giant silver dust rats. He continued until his experience bar finally reached 15%. Giant rat tails, giant rat skulls, etc. All these items were gathered in a large heap. Furthermore, he had also obtained 3 coppers total as loot drops. The drop rate for money was extremely low. Only under certain circumstances would the drop rate be higher. This was in order to make convictions in-game currency much more valuable. As Ni Yan's Vital Strike slew yet another giant rat, something appeared flickering under its corpse. Ni Yan's heart skipped a beat. Quickly, he bent over to pick up the item. Tough leather leg protectors. White equipment. Level requirement. Level 0. Properties. Defense 3 to 5. Weight 3 pounds. User restriction. Warrior. Can be equipped by any faction. Equipment drops in Conviction were quite rare. Only in a few relatively higher instances would the drop rate be increased. However, the level of difficulty for such instances would also be much higher. Ni Yan remembered very clearly in the past, there were many players level 10 or higher who had no choice but to equip level 5 equipment. Simply because they couldn't find level 10 equipment. They had to form parties and hunt monsters with lower level gear. Since this tough leather leg protector is meant for warriors, it'll sell for at least 7 coppers if I throw it into the auction house. He stored the tough leather leg protector into his inventory. A beginner bag had only 20 slots. Ni Yan filled his bag with so many items. There now were only 11 slots remaining. Inside the beginner bag was a dimensional space. Items stored inside this space wouldn't raise a player's weight value. A player's weight value was only affected by the player's equipment. With the 3 coppers that had previously dropped, and by selling off the tough leather leg protector, my funds should be brought up to 10 coppers. Turning in these quests should also give me a few rewards. I ought to have a little over 20 coppers by then. Ni Yan glanced over at his bag space. The 5 quests he had accepted were all completed. So he started heading back to Telik Town. As he no longer needed to hunt the giant silver dust rats, Ni Yan was doing his utmost to catch up. First, he would bridge the level gap between him and the other players. Then he would use his past life's experience to progressively expand his superiority in the game. After returning to Telik Town, Ni Yan handed over all 5 quests. Completing his missions, he obtained 600 experience, which raised his experience bar to 55%. Furthermore, he had also received 34 coppers, an amount which exceeded his expectations. The money and experience awarded by those 3 hidden NPCs were several times higher than what ordinary NPCs would have rewarded. Besides the money and experience, he also received 3 basic health potions. Ni Yan put the tough leather leg protector in the auction house and walked towards the weapon shop. Upon arriving outside of the place, he saw a small narrow shop front. However, after entering, the interior space was actually quite large, roughly 5 by 10 meters. Weapons for every profession could be seen lined up on both the left and right sides of the wall. Common equipment for all professions could also be seen hanging from the rear wall of the shop. Bows, crossbows, small daggers, etc. The store filled to the brim with equipment was a dazzling display for the eyes. The weapon shop's owner was a fierce-looking blacksmith, appearing to be in his 40s. The weapons I forge are the best within the whole region of the Western Prairies. Respected adventurers, may I ask what you require? Seeing business arrive, the blacksmith came up to greet him in a lively, straightforward tone. Bow or crossbow? Let's see. What kind of bow or crossbow are you looking for? The equipment I have here can meet all the requirements of adventurers who are level 5 or lower. Level 0. One that I can use. Attack +3 or more. And firing rate of 12 or more. Ni Yan thought for a moment. And added, the price should be within 30 coppers. Ni Yan originally thought collecting 20 coppers would be sufficient to purchase an ordinary bow or crossbow. He didn't expect that he would exceed his target goal and earn 37 coppers. After the tough leather leg protector sold, his funds would surpass 40 coppers. He had a complete abundance of money to splurge on a better bow or crossbow. I have 3 pieces of equipment that meet your criteria. The first is a short bow. Attack +3. Firing rate is 13. Attack deviation of 11%. And the range of 20 meters. The price is 7 copper coins. The blacksmith took out a short bow and presented it to Ni Yan. Do you have anything better? Perhaps something with a higher accuracy? Quote, he had a task he wanted to complete, and though the short bow would suffice, having something better would save him time. Well, I also have this long bow. It has attack +5. Firing rate of 12. Deviation of 9%. And range of 30 meters. The price is 15 coppers. The blacksmith took out a long bow and presented it. Afterward, he took out an exquisite one-handed crossbow. He loaded it with 5 bolts. Then propped it up with his arm and aimed it around the shop. If that doesn't please you, then this is my finest piece of work. The one I'm most proud of. A compact crossbow with a triple shot effect. Attack +5. Firing rate of 8. Furthermore, as a result of its supplementary firing ability, the firing rate of a single shot is tested at 15. It has a deviation of 5. And the range 30 meters. The price is 28 coppers. I'll take it. Give me 9 low-grade crossbow bolt quivers as well, Ni Yan said. Each quiver contained 1,000 low-grade crossbow bolts. It was definitely enough. Ni Yan spent 37 coppers to complete the transaction, leaving him without a single copper remaining. He stored the crossbow and 9 quivers he had recently purchased into his bag space. Feel free to come again, respected adventurer. I wish you a safe journey. In his past life, when Ni Yan had first entered the game, he believed the NPCs only possessed simple AI. He amazed at what he discovered. Afterward, he was able to keep his calm much more easily. As Ni Yan left the weapon shop, a system notification appeared. System: your tough leather leg protector has been sold for 8 coppers. Ah, it finally sold. Not bad. I now have 8 coppers as my total funds. At least I won't be considered too poor right now. Ni Yan left the boundaries of Telik Town and hurried over towards the level 8 Bison spawn area. The Bison monsters were even more dangerous than the Wildcats. They had extremely powerful attacks, and their movement speeds were also much faster than the Wildcats. In fact, they were more than 3 times faster than Ni Yan with his current stats. When facing against these Bisons, there was essentially only death and no chance of survival. Currently, there was not a single player whatsoever who dared to face off against a level 8 monster. Even if they were currently the highest level player in the game, they still wouldn't dare. 1. 289.221. 2. 231.256. 3. 220.389. Chapter 7: Bypassing the level gap and killing the bison. Passing through a vast expanse of prairie land, Ni Yan, at last, arrived at a region of barrens and stone. As far as the eye could see, lofty and oddly shaped boulders were irregularly strewn throughout the area. Within this mess of boulders were narrow cracks and passageways. It should be right here. Ni Yan surveyed the expanse for a moment. After confirming without a doubt that these were the correct coordinates, he became especially vigilant and began slowly sneaking around. This region was where bisons actively roamed about. The whole area permeated with a sense of dread and danger. Cautiously, he squeezed himself into one of the narrow passageways within the boulders. Coordinates 1. The topography of this region was strange and eccentric. The narrow passageways within these boulders only allowed enough space for a single person to pass through. As he looked out after going through the narrow passageway, a dark-colored bison in an area at a distance of about 26 meters away entered his vision. Large and robust, its entire body was densely packed with muscle. Above its head, 2 sharp horns resembling the tips of daggers protruded out. Bison Chief. Leader. Level 8. Health. 300 and 300ths. Ni Yan took out his crossbow and held it with his left hand. He began calibrating it, making sure the angle was just right. By lucky coincidence, the Bison Chief was within his attacking range. Due to its body size being so massive, even if it were to discover his presence, it was still unable to traverse the narrow passageways within the mess of boulders. As a result, it was completely incapable of attacking him. This was a typical terrain exploit. This was an exploit his arcane mage friend had discovered within the game. However, at present, the only one who was aware of this terrain exploit was him. By employing this exploit, Ni Yan could bypass the level disparity and effortlessly kill this Bison Chief. Ni Yan began loading the crossbow with bolts. After 3 seconds, 3 crossbow bolts were completely loaded and the crossbow was cocked and ready to fire. WSH. 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 3 bolts were fired in rapid succession, flying in a straight line right towards the Bison Chief. Put. The 3 crossbow bolts hit the Bison Chief nearly simultaneously. miss, -1, miss. 3 damage values floated above the Bison Chief's head. Due to the level disparity between both sides being too large, Ni Yan's attacks against the Bison Chief were weak. Most of the time it would be a miss, and even if it did hit the target, it would only cause a little bit of damage. After it had been attacked, the Bison Chief huffed out a large amount of musty air and began its mad charge towards Ni Yan's location. Boom! A large crashing sound burst out. The Bison Chief had charged into the boulders and was repelled back. Its attack was unable to reach Ni Yan. It could only turn around and circle the boulders, without having any other course of action. Ni Yan skillfully finished reloading the crossbow and, like before, shot out 3 bolts in rapid succession towards the Bison Chief. Although the damage was extremely low, under Ni Yan's continuous and unrelenting attacks, the Bison Chief's health bar began showing signs of declining ever so slightly. However, it was awfully slow, merely falling by the smallest amount. Every now and then, it even recovered by a slight fraction. Ni Yan's rate of fire was quite stable. After suffering his attacks, the Bison Chief bellowed out furiously. Precisely because it was incapable of even nearing Ni Yan, everything went as smoothly as expected. Ni Yan was attacking the Bison Chief while figuring out the next step in his leveling strategy. After being reborn, if he were like others trying to find a place to level, it would truly be an asinine waste of his time. One must know, Ni Yan's mind possessed a vast amount of game knowledge. He followed his own reasoning and designed a perfect leveling plan. The seconds and minutes continued to pass by. After half an hour, Ni Yan had completely used up all of the crossbow bolts within one quiver. 1,000 crossbow bolts. At present, the Bison Chief still had approximately 2/3 of its health remaining. The uninterrupted process of reloading and shooting made Ni Yan feel himself about to fall asleep. However, he still spent great effort in maintaining his high frequency of firing, so as to avoid having the Bison Chief's health recover again after he ceased his attacks. The Bison Chief began getting somewhat weary. It continually strained for breath as it anxiously rammed against the rocks and collapsed a portion of the boulders. Ni Yan quickly retreated inward a bit, and at that moment, his menu sounded out with a voice call notification. Expert. I went to the coordinates you gave us for farming monsters. It is indeed very fast. I've already picked up 2 stealth skill books from today alone. Flying Stone said. At the location where Ni Yan told him to train, leveling was 50% more efficient compared to the common training areas. This had made Flying Stone really excited. Gifting Ni Yan a single stealth skill book had given him such a treasure trove of a training area. It was definitely a worthwhile trade. That's natural, of course. Fallen Shamans also drop the Owl Sight skill book. If you find any extra, don't forget to send me one. Ni Yan wasn't the least bit surprised. He had gone through numerous expert strategy guides in his previous life. Small tidbits like these, the amount he remembered was definitely not few in number. In his life, Ni Yan was the type of person who was thick-skinned and furthermore very forgetful. There was an awful amount of things he would go through life forgetting or completely neglecting. However, the only things he remembered the most distinctly were definitely these game strategy guides. Every person had an exceptional memory when dealing with the things they were particularly interested in. If the skill book drops, I'll send it to you through the mail. There's something I've been wondering about. How did you find out about this training spot? Stone asked through the chat. When he had met Ni Yan, the latter had been nothing more than a level 0. I used to play on a warrior account. However, I deleted it to create a thief. Ni Yan casually gave out an excuse without thinking. Naturally, he didn't want anyone to know the secret was that he had been reincarnated. So it was like that. Your warrior account must have been really high-leveled. Huh. Why'd you end up deleting it? In a few days, one of my friends wants to form a group to enter the Fallen Shaman camp. Expert. What are your thoughts on this? Stone asked expectantly in his message. Ni Yan certainly did appear to be a person who was very knowledgeable. Furthermore, his several friends were indeed only able to fight to the Fallen Shaman camp's outer area and couldn't advance any farther. The Fallen Shaman camp is a high difficulty instance. Instances are divided into special instances and basic instances. When a special instance is cleared by players, it disappears and becomes an ordinary area. As for basic instances, if they were cleared by players, they can still be repeatedly entered afterward. However, the equipment drop rate is much lower and the profits earned weren't that high either. The Fallen Shaman camp is classified as a basic instance. It's divided into 5 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, expert, specialist. The higher the difficulty, the better the equipment that would drop. If a party were to clear this instance, they would have to wait 5 days until they could enter and clear it again. A full walkthrough on how to clear the Fallen Shaman camp will cost you 2 silvers. No bargaining, Ni Yan replied. 2 silvers were the equivalent of 200 coppers. Towards new players, this was definitely an extravagant sum of money. However, since Stone's friends were able to form a team to clear the Fallen Shaman camp, 2 silvers shouldn't be regarded as much. I'll go back and discuss it with my friend. Stone was a little skeptical. He couldn't possibly have a complete Fallen Shaman camp walkthrough. Right? Such a thing doesn't even exist online. On an average run, profits from clearing the easy difficulty of the Fallen Shaman camp should be about 3 silvers. If their luck were good, they might be able to obtain 1 or 2 high-quality drops with decent stats. Though the drop everyone wanted the most from the Fallen Shaman camp was still the Heal skill book. Ni Yan demanding a 2 silver information fee could be regarded as beyond excessive. If no equipment dropped, then they would have paid Ni Yan for nothing. The difficulty of the Fallen Shaman camp was a little high. After their party gets wiped out a few times, they'll naturally realize the fee Ni Yan had commissioned wasn't the least bit expensive at all. Reply to me after your friend agrees. If he doesn't agree, don't bother me unless you have business. Ni Yan continued shooting at his target. Under his constant rain of fire, the Bison chief gradually began showing indications of falling. All right, I'll go and talk with our party leader. There was basically an equal sign connecting Ni Yan to the title of an expert. He wasn't slightest bit offended in regards to Ni Yan's cold attitude. Experts who have this kind of personality were also pretty common. Stone was wondering, what level did Nirvana Flame's previous warrior account reach? It ought to have been really powerful. But why did he end up deleting it? Could it have possibly been related to a matter that was difficult to discuss? Flying Stone finished speaking. Doot. 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 A busy signal came from the voice chat. Ni Yan hung up and accelerated the firing rate of the crossbow in his hand. One after another, Arrows continued to rapidly leave the crossbow and shoot out. Firing for 1.5 hours, he had consumed around 3,600 crossbow bolts. Moo. At long last, the Bison chief let out a final agonizing cry before staggering to the ground. The massive body smashed heavily towards the earth, and Ni Yan could even feel the vibrations under his feet. Ni Yan estimated a bit. If he had used the short bow, killing the Bison chief would have taken at least 5 hours in addition to consuming over 10,000 arrows. Fortunately, this single-handed crossbow with its additional skill saved him quite a bit of time. 2 white lights shone upon Ni Yan's body as 2 clear and melodious tunes sounded out. Each one represented a single level up. System. You've successfully slain a Bison chief. Plus 1,800% experience for killing a monster above your level. You have received 8,290 experience points. Ni Yan glanced at his experience bar. He had reached level 2 with 21% of his experience bar already filled. The experience gained from killing the Bison chief was definitely enormous. After finally completing his task, Ni Yan put away the crossbow in his hand and walked over towards the Bison chief's corpse. Searching under the Bison chief's dead body, he found that it dropped 5 coppers. In addition, he also managed to pick up a dagger. Ni Yan glanced at the dagger's stats. Horn dagger. Bronze. Properties. Unidentified. Ni Yan's eyelids jumped up in excitement. It was a bronze-grade dagger. Equipment was divided in these grades: white, bronze, silver, gold, dark gold, and legendary. Occasionally there would also be green-colored sets. Only equipment at bronze grade or above had additional properties. The monsters within Conviction are classified into these rarities: leaders, sub-elites, elites, and lords. These monsters were uncommon and very few in number, as well as spawning infrequently. Equipment with additional properties only had a 1 in 1,000 chance of dropping. The majority of players could only make do by wearing white-grade equipment. Due to this, equipment with additional properties were all fairly precious, and their prices would skyrocket to the extent that they were unbearable for ordinary players. Bronze-grade weapons normally had additional 20% attack above that of ordinary weapons. Furthermore, they also came with additional properties. The equipment that a level 8 Bison Chief drops should be level 5. At present, the price of a level 5 bronze-grade dagger is at least 3 silvers or higher. Furthermore, an average level 3 player's total assets, for the most part, was only about 20 coppers. If one had assets valued at the level of silvers, they were definitely a very well-off person. According to his plans, he gathered the Bison Chief's drops and stored away the bronze-grade dagger into his bag space. Ni Yan retreated from the narrow passageways within the boulders and headed back towards Telik Town. Telik Town's only appraiser was a short-statured white-bearded old man with narrow triangular eyes. He was very shrewd, making everyone who saw him feel very unnerved. However, he was the only appraiser in all of Telik Town. Ni Yan opened the trading window. "Youngster, do you need me to appraise any items?" the short old man asked. "A dagger." Ni Yan put up the horn dagger into the appraisal window. "The appraisal fee is 10 coppers. Do you still wish for an appraisal?" Quote. Ni Yan's heart skipped a beat. This horn dagger's appraisal fee was 10 coppers. Typically, the appraisal fee for an item was 5% of the item's price. and this was only the NPC's price for the item. The market price was frequently more than 6 times higher than that. In other words, this horn dagger had a value of at least 12 silvers. He thought for a moment. In the next few days, I won't be needing to go anywhere that requires a lot of money. Spending 10 coppers also won't be that troublesome. He pressed confirm. The horn dagger blossomed with a cyan radiance. Its brilliance was definitely not understated. This radiance was a distinctive characteristic of bronze-grade equipment. The horn dagger's handle was cambered with the texture of wood, with an awfully sharp blade in the front. It was much thicker compared to ordinary daggers and possessed the unique characteristic of being shaped like a bull's horn. Horn dagger. Bronze. Level requirement. Level 5. Properties. Attack 16 to 19. Strength +5. Attack speed 2.3. Weight 1 pound. User restriction. Thief. Can be equipped by any faction. This horn dagger gave a bonus to his strength stat. These 5 points in strength were equivalent to 5 points of attack. Then add on to the fact that the dagger's base attack was already higher than an ordinary level 5 daggers by 3 or 4 points. It meant this horn dagger was better than an ordinary dagger by nearly 10 points. The influence of these 10 points of attack, speaking from a new player's perspective, was indeed very large. Looks like I've picked up a reliable level 5 dagger. Ni Yan thought. 1. 528.192. Chapter 8 The Price of Underestimation. After finishing the appraisal of the dagger, Ni Yan had begun to walk outside. Lowering his head, he took a glance at his skill bar. There were only 2 skills there: stealth and vital strike. A perfect thief should have numerous skills piled up at their disposal. A thief could make do without equipment. However, they absolutely could not do without skills. Of the several areas where thief skill books could be farmed in the beginning stages of the game, Ni Yan knew all of them like the back of his hand. However, he would be unlikely to take the great effort and pain of farming them out. If a skill book could be farmed out, then it could also easily be bought in the marketplace. Were there any other places where I could find rare beginner skill books? Ni Yan smacked his forehead. How did I manage to forget that? With regards to professions such as a thieves, if they wanted to possess sustainable fighting strength, they would often select either alchemy, crafting, or the bandage skill. Alchemy crafting allowed a player to manufacture every kind of health potion, drug, etc. in the middle of a battle. A health potion that could instantly restore lost health was tantamount to a second life for a player. Afterwards, when a battle was over, drinking a recovery potion allowed a player to quickly restore their health and throw themselves back into combat again, thus accelerating their training speed as well. As for the bandaging skill, in comparison to a health potion, it was a bit lacking. The common bandage skill could not be used during a skirmish. Ni Yan knew of a location where a rare skill, combat medic, could be learned. Unlike bandage, it could be used while in combat. At higher levels, if a person wished to purchase middle or higher tiered health or recovery potions from the marketplace, their expenditure would be quite large. After all, their prices were quite costly. For most players, health and recovery potions were items they could only acquire by digging through the gaps between their teeth. Unless one were rich, the average player wouldn't be seen commonly using health or recovery potions. However, Ni Yan was different. His head was filled with many ways to earn money quickly and easily. He didn't need to worry about money. Later on, health and recovery potions were all things he could easily buy from the marketplace. Thus, it wasn't necessary for him to waste his time learning alchemy crafting. However, if he learned this combat medic skill, it would greatly enhance his survivability. Thinking to this, Ni Yan suddenly had an idea. I'll put that off for later. I should learn the combat medic skill first. Ni Yan spent 2 coppers and bought 2 basic underwater breathing pills from the NPC general store. Right after, he rushed towards Lake Rando, which wasn't too far of a distance from Telik town. After passing through several level 2 to 3 areas, he had met many players that had formed parties to hunt monsters. They often occupied a single region in their own area. Warriors, paladins, etc. All these close combat professions worked to draw monsters. Right afterwards, the mage would unleash an unceasing barrage of spells towards these monsters. Some parties would even bring their own priest. Most priests didn't currently have the heal skill. Their ability to deal damage wasn't as good as mages either. For the most part, they were dirty experience leeches. Despite this, every team still looked for a priest as if they were a hot commodity. This was because if a team wanted to have any growth or development in the future, they absolutely needed to have a good relationship with their priest. Lacking a priest was the same as lacking an endless supply of health potions. As for thieves, in the early stages of the game, many thieves would be easily dumped by their team. However, thieves were quite famous for their solo training speed, as long as they purchased all of the necessary skills they required. A thief's training speed would not be inferior to a mage's in any aspect. So, it wouldn't be much of a loss if they couldn't join a team. Level training in the various monster spawn areas was awfully monotonous and boring. However, these players could still chat with each other. Thus, the time would pass quite quickly when they chatted on idly. Ni Yan carefully passed through these areas where players were training because a lot of struggles would occur between players for certain training spots. If a player killed other players, they would receive a penalty with their names marked red. They would be barred from entering city walls as well. Having their names marked red meant other players could kill them without fear of recourse. Their loss of levels upon death would be even harsher, and every single piece of equipment would drop as well. Though, if that player killed monsters for a certain period of time, the red marking on their name would eventually disappear. Despite this, many players would still frequently take this risk for the sake of stealing another player's equipment. Not hesitating in the slightest, they would kill others for their equipment, regardless of having their name marked red. In order to do this safely, they would often target strangers in the wilderness far away from any city. Thus, one must be very cautious when traveling alone. Lake Rando. This area was inhabited by fishmen monsters. According to rumors, these fishmen were the descendants of the ancient wicked Naga. After countless generations, they finally developed into their current form. They possessed the body of a fish, and 4 limbs just like a human. The weapons they employed for attacks were their sharp teeth and the tridents they held in their hands. Fishmen were level 3 monsters that heavily populated the area with their massive numbers. Furthermore, there was even a fishmen village within the vicinity. It was necessary for Ni Yan to pass through the borders of the village to enter Lake Rando. Afterwards, he would need to swim through the lake to arrive at his destination. Situated by the lakeside of Lake Rando was the Fishmen village with its several hundred wooden huts, scattered sporadically by the sandy edges of the lakeshore. This Fishmen village contained at least 300 or so fishmen, several tens of fishmen leaders, and 2 elite fishmen. If one wanted to clear this area, they'd need at least 1,000 players or more. Just as Ni Yan was preparing to use stealth to bypass the Fishmen village, a system announcement rang out. Local announcement. The Guild, Victorious Return, is planning to clear this location in 3 minutes. All players within the vicinity of the Fishmen village, please depart immediately. Victorious Return? Ni Yan raised his eyebrow. In his previous life, he and the Guild Victorious Return had a few run-ins and festivities together. Victorious Return's people ran rampant and acted arrogantly. They'd clear the path and kill everyone in it whenever they wanted to. A long time ago, one of Ni Yan's brothers killed 3 members from Victorious Return because he was discontent from the guild forcing him out of a training area. A bit of a grudge was pillared down with those from the Victorious Return, and all of the guilds went chasing after him. They threatened to have his brother slaughtered back to level 0. Ni Yan's and the others' strength was still pretty weak back then. Thus he could only hide deeply in the ravines of the mountain. He continued to level up and trained like a madman for over a month. Only when he felt his level had reached high enough did he dare to come out. Even then, he was still barely able to defend himself. In the end, he never dared to have a direct open confrontation with a big guild like Victorious Return. The feeling of powerlessness back then. Don't even bring it up. In this life, that sort of history absolutely won't repeat itself. This debt would definitely be one that I'll have repaid in full. However, it won't be today. For now, Ni Yan had just entered the game for less than a day. He still needed to gradually accumulate his wealth bit by bit. Immediately, he turned and ran towards the lakeside. As he looked ahead of him, he saw the clear waters merging with the reflection of the azure sky. The lake gleamed and sparkled as the sun's rays illuminated the top of the crystalline clear waters. Victorious Return's players had mobilized intensely and were surveying the area. There were many areas in the vicinity where one could discover the movements of Victorious Return's people. They definitely did not come with few numbers. It appeared that they were preparing to begin their operation on the Fishmen village. The Fishmen village wasn't an instance, but rather a spawning ground for monsters to congregate. These types of places would also frequently drop decent items. Ni Yan passed through a small grove of trees, arriving at about 200 meters away from the lakeside. Suddenly, a ball of fire streaked through the sky, launching towards Ni Yan's location. As the ball of fire flashed, Ni Yan's line of sight shifted past the grove of trees. His eyes fell upon the body of an elementalist wearing a red robe. The opposing player was a level 3 elementalist from Victorious Return. Mages were divided into 3 types of classes: elementalists, arcane mages, and holy mages. Elementalists had the ability to control ice, fire, and lightning. Their power was the elements. Arcane mages were able to control arcane might, and finally, there were the holy mages. They were the least selected profession. Their skills were the most difficult to train in. However, their power was definitely the strongest. They could cast and unleash the power of divine spells. The killing power of fire spells was the highest among the spells at an elementalist's disposal. By the time Ni Yan had noticed the fireball, it was already too late. Boom! The fireball exploded on Ni Yan's body. It tore through Ni Yan's health, as his health bar plummeted by 22 points. System: the opposing player Violet Flame has attacked you. You are free to retaliate in legitimate self-defense. Time: 3 minutes. When coming across a mage, you either run up to them and engage them in close-quarters combat or hurriedly ran away. After confirming there were no other players from Victorious Return nearby, Ni Yan dashed towards the elementalist named Violet Flame. A mage's strategy was to maintain as great of a distance from the enemy as possible and bombard them with magic spells. The elementalist Violet Flame leapt back using the spell Flame Burst and cast Fireball once again. Afterwards, he turned around and fled in an attempt to gain some distance from Ni Yan. When facing incoming magic in a fight, players were usually able to dodge the spell by rolling. However, if they dodged the spell by rolling, they would undoubtedly give the opposing elementalist the opportunity to gain some distance. Ni Yan directly confronted the elementalist's fireball and continued to charge forward. Boom! The fireball exploded on Ni Yan's body, causing him to lose 27 points of health. Each time Violet Flame cast a spell, there would be a delay in the casting of the spell. There were some essential factors in casting magic: gestures, language, material, and magical tools were all required in casting different types of magic. The requirements for casting different spell were distinct. Some only required for you to perform a chant to cast the spell. Some required gestures and others required chants, gestures, and materials. All of these components at once in order to cast a spell. Every spell had different requirements in order to be cast, and the casting time would vary as well. Casting a spell used syllables and gestures as units. 1 syllable per second and 1 gesture per second. 10 syllables formed into a set of syllables and 10 gestures formed into a set of gestures. Syllables and gestures could also be layered over each other, meaning they could both be done at the same time. The casting time for the Flame Burst spell was 2 syllables and 2 gestures for a total of 2 seconds. If they hadn't learned a movement skill when casting the Flame Burst spell, they would need to stay still for 2 seconds. Ni Yan took advantage of the time Violet Flame used to cast Flame Burst to press forward quickly. With a forward stab, he shaved off 23 points of health from Violet Flame. A mage's defense was extraordinarily fragile. Violet Flame leapt backwards. Promptly, he cast Fierce Flame Ring. 4 separate flames appeared launching towards Ni Yan. Fierce Flame Ring only required 1 syllable in order to cast. At such a close distance, Ni Yan was simply unable to evade it. Thus, he could only suffer through, receiving 39 points in damage. With a flick of his finger, he took out the basic health potion from his belt and downed it. Violet Flame's actions could be regarded as standard for a mage. However, his movements were quite rigid and clumsy. Every mage would tense up when a thief neared them in close proximity. As the Fierce Flame Ring was flying through the air, Violet Flame took the opportunity to draw back. Ni Yan added many points into dexterity. In terms of speed, thieves were still quite remarkable. This time around, his speed gained him an advantage as he continuously wrapped around Violet Flame. He lunged out with 2 consecutive stabs, causing Violet Flame to lose 36 points of health. Once more, Violet Flame cast another fireball towards Ni Yan. Conviction's combat system counted 3 seconds per round, and any magical spell that took less than 3 seconds to chant would be uninterruptible unless the caster died. Even though it was a close combat battle, Violet Flame would still be able to counterattack Ni Yan. Under Fireball's high damage, Ni Yan was left with 25 health remaining. Violet Flame wanted to retreat back to pull some distance. Brandishing his staff, he began reciting another spell incantation. The fire elements rapidly began moving towards his staff and coalescing into a round mass. It appeared Violet Flame still had 51 health remaining. For the time being, he was safe because Ni Yan merely had 25 health remaining. As long as he casts another fireball, he could finish off Ni Yan. Following Violet Flame's chanting, the fire elements rapidly gathered together as it raged and blazed forward. Drop dead. Violet Flame felt everything was now within his control. The flames from his staff illuminated the sinister expression on his face. Ni Yan was well aware of how dangerous his current situation was. He had already forced his way to Violet Flame's side. Glancing at his rage bar, he noticed it was fully charged and matched the requirements for an enhanced attack. Ni Yan's deep black pupils locked onto Violet Flame's throat. Quickly, he maneuvered the dagger in his hand into a reverse grip. Vital strike. Quote. Ni Yan's and Violet Flame's body crossed paths. A streak of cold glint flashed past Violet Flame's throat. A deep cut appeared on his throat as it split open with blood gushing forth. System. Vital strike successful. Attack plus 5%. Causing additional damage. Minus 51. A damage value floated atop Violet Flame's head. A complete turnaround. How is this possible? His eyes were deeply permeated with an unfathomable sort of expression. Never underestimate the explosive power of a thief. When facing a thief, never feel that you're safe or secure, even if you occupy an absolute advantage. Because in the very next moment, the one who ends up dead could very well be you. The light in Violet Flame's eyes gradually faded. Plop. He collapsed on the ground. Still unable to understand what had happened. How could a single thief just suddenly burst out with so much damage? Vital strike. This skill's damage is pretty good. Ni Yan thought. Ni Yan put away his dagger. Then bent down to look through Violet Flame's corpse. Soon, he retrieved a dropped equipment and picked up a level 0 intelligence plus 3 bronze staff. He estimated he could sell it for around 10 or so coppers. There's an enemy over there. Violet Flame was killed. Quote. Chase. Don't let him escape. Ni Yan had killed a member from Victorious Return. Such a large event was certain to attract the attention of everyone within the surrounding area. 6 members from Victorious Return came from every direction and quickly rushed towards Ni Yan's location in an attempt to surround him. Seeing this, Ni Yan made a mad dash towards Lake Rando. His running speed was quicker than most of the average players at his level. Soon, he rapidly gained some distance between him and the other players. Though, a swordsman appeared right ahead of Ni Yan, barring his way forward. You want to run? It's not going to be that easy. Linear / single quote. Chapter 9 Fishmen. The berserker jumped high into the air. Borrowing the force of gravity, he sent his sword cleaving towards Ni Yan. By the time Ni Yan saw the berserker's bastard sword whistling through the wind, it had already neared his forehead. Ni Yan leaned his body to the side as the sword brushed past. Within conviction, long-range attacks would automatically lock onto their target, who could only roll to dodge. As for melee combat, one could sidestep to avoid certain attacks. The most important requirement while sidestepping to dodge head-on attacks was to have good reaction speed. The timing had to be extremely precise. In his previous life, Ni Yan had already trained this ability to an extremely proficient level. After he dodged the berserker's attack, he made a mad dash towards the lake. As his sword slashed through empty space, the berserker stared out blankly with a look of shock. That guy's reaction speed is quick. Being able to even dodge an attack like that. By the time he turned his head, the berserker had discovered that Ni Yan had already run out a far distance. Seeing this, he held his sword out and gave chase. "Third brother, what's going on with you? You can't even stop a single person from running away." To his side, a fighter came running over and voiced out his complaints. "That thief's movements were too quick. I wasn't able to stop him at all." Quote, the fighter quickly glanced over at Elementalist Zhuo's violet flames corpse. Zhuo was an extremely reclusive fellow. However, his skills were definitely not weak. Yet he still died by the hands of that thief. Looking back, it appeared that the thief was not as simple as he first appeared. "Everyone, gather up and bar his way forward." Quote, both the fighter and berserker accelerated their pace. As he drew increasingly closer to the lake's surface, at about 5 or 6 meters away, Ni Yan fished out the basic underwater breathing pill he had bought prior and popped it into his mouth. He wants to dive into the lake to escape. Quote, don't let him get to the water. Quote, in a moment of mutual understanding, both the berserker and fighter simultaneously leapt forward. The fighter and berserker were both professions of the warrior class. Their attacks after borrowing the momentum of their leaps were much more fierce and quick compared to other melee professions. Sudden assault. Quote, flame slash. Quote, the fighter brandished his sword and charged forward, quickly advancing towards Ni Yan. As the berserker cleaved downwards, his sword ignited and became enveloped in raging flames. Ni Yan and the two were still a bit of a distance apart. As he turned his head to look back at them, he immediately felt his face assaulted by the flames of the sword stroke. Suddenly, from the corners of his mouth, he revealed a strange smile and then leapt backwards. His back entered the waters first, as he plunged deeply into Lake Rando. Right after, concentric ripples began slowly dispersing through the surface of the tranquil lake waters. The fighter and berserker rushed over, finally stopping at the lakeside. The berserker prepared to jump into the lake waters, but the fighter pulled him back and stopped him. Forget it. There's no need to chase after a cornered enemy. Besides, none of us have any underwater breathing pills. The fighter thought back to the strange smile Ni Yan had shown just moment prior. This was the root cause of his unwillingness to enter the lake's waters. For fear that Ni Yan could possibly have some sort of malicious plan for them in the waters below. Ultimately, he was fearful that it would cause them to be left buried under the lake bed. Forget it. Just like that, the berserker replied in an extremely depressed tone. Just consider it Zhuo's bad luck. Who let him think he was so invincible that he could just separate himself from the team like that? Anyway, We'll let this be a lesson for him. There are still many experts besides him. Several players from Victorious Return ran up to them breathlessly, most of whom were mages, priests, and so on. Their movement speeds weren't as quick compared to the warriors. Hence, they were left far behind. How'd it go? Where'd that guy run off to? One of the mages asked. The fighter shook his head and replied, "We didn't catch him. He ended up diving into the lake." That mage had an astonished expression as he gazed at the fighter and berserker. These two, Zi Yan, Violet Cliff, and Zi Ming, Violet Underworld, could be considered the top two warriors within the guild. First, that thief killed Zi Huo. And then he managed to escape even after being surrounded by Zi Yan and Zi Ming. Where the hell did that thief come from? I wonder, what was that thief's name? Go ask Zi Huo. He should have already revived at the graveyard. The mage spoke in a curious tone. Zi Huo just said the thief's name is Nirvana Flame. Zi Ming replied and firmly kept this name within his mind. In a concerned tone, the mage commanded, "From now on, have the people under you stay cautious. If they encounter this Nirvana Flame, have them report back immediately." When the several of them came across Ni Yan, they were unable to gain any sort of advantage. As for the outcome, if ordinary members of the guild were to encounter him, one could well imagine the consequences. After Ni Yan dived into the lake, he began swimming about. The waters of Lake Rando were extraordinarily clear. The sun's rays penetrated through the water. As the light refracted through the water's surface, it formed brightly colored pillars. The lake's vegetation drifted about gently, slowly dancing with the waves. It formed an exceptionally beautiful and mesmerizing piece of scenery. As Ni Yan was submerged near the lake floor, shuttling himself between the lake's vegetation, he suddenly recalled that there was another chest within Lake Rando's waters as well. However, he was a little unsure of its exact location as his memory was still a bit hazy. It should definitely be near this area. That chest should contain the skill book of a supportive skill called Gatherer. Even though Gatherer is not some kind of rare skill book, it's still pretty scarce, considering the average level of the current player base. After a player learned the Gatherer skill, they could increase their income by quite a bit. Every team required at least one member to have this skill, and every solo player definitely required the Gatherer skill as well. The market demand for the skill book was huge. However, the supply was few. This caused the relationship between supply and demand to become unbalanced. In turn, it caused the price of the Gatherer skill book to soar to great heights. If I'm able to find the treasure chest, it would be very good. One of the characteristics of thieves is that they're able to reach many locations that other professions would be incapable of reaching. By acquiring the Gatherer skill, I can make it display even more of its usefulness. Basic underwater breathing pills can only last for 15 minutes. If I had known earlier that I was going to be underwater searching for a treasure chest, I would have definitely bought a few more. Ni Yan felt a considerable bit of regret. In the far distance, a figure slowly submerged itself into the water and began swimming over. After being illuminated by the sun's rays, Ni Yan could, at last, see the figure distinctly. It was indeed a level 3 fishman. It had the body of a fish, its 4 limbs continuously moving to and fro. The speed of its movement underwater was unusually quick. In addition, it held a trident which was grasped firmly in its hand. Ni Yan hurriedly concealed himself within the thickets of the underwater vegetation. If it were 1 versus 1, Ni Yan could effortlessly kill this fishman. However, fishmen very much loathed fighting one-on-one. In a situation where they were attacked, they would produce a howl so intense that it draws all the fishmen within the immediate vicinity over to its location. For the purpose of staying safe, Ni Yan definitely did not dare to provoke these troublesome fellows. The fishman was in an area not far from Ni Yan and was swimming over, pushing apart the underwater vegetation. It made its way through. While the fishman was brushing past the underwater plants, Ni Yan's eyes peered through the thickets of vegetation, discovering an object faintly concealed within. Glancing at the fishman who had swum a far distance away, Ni Yan carefully swam past. This was an area heavily surrounded by fishmen activity. If he were discovered, it would become dangerous very quickly. Ni Yan brushed past the vegetation. After searching for a while, he finally found a small wooden crate within the vegetation. It was the lowest level of treasure chests, white grade. However, he was unsure if it was the one from his memories that he was looking for. After opening the wooden crate, Ni Yan went about digging through it. Surprisingly, the sensation he felt in his hands when he touched the object in the chest wasn't that of a skill book, but rather that of a smooth pearl. Ni Yan examined this object's properties. Murloc Water Aversion Pearl. Special item. Additional effect. Allows the user to breathe underwater. Once activated, allows the user to breathe underwater for 30 minutes. Cooldown. 12 hours. It was the most basic of special items, although the item wasn't anything particularly great. It would allow Ni Yan to save on a few basic underwater breathing pills. So, he would still be able to use them in the future. It seems this place doesn't contain only a single chest after thinking about it. It should be right. Within such a large lake, the developers definitely wouldn't place only a single treasure chest. Ni Yan continued his search through the thick plant growth, traveling back and forth. After finding the water aversion pearl, he spent quite an ample amount of time searching for treasure chests underwater. There were some movements in one of the thickets not far from him, causing Ni Yan's heart to jump with fright. Hurriedly, he ducked into the undergrowth next to him and concealed himself. A single fishman appeared swimming through the vegetation, not far from Ni Yan. It leisurely swam past the gaps between the aquatic plant life. In the next moment, another fishman came swimming towards Ni Yan's location. A single fishman appeared swimming through the vegetation, not far from Ni Yan. It leisurely swam past the gaps between the aquatic plant life. In the next moment, another fishman came swimming towards Ni Yan's location. Then another fishman appeared and another one. The fishmen were appearing with increasing frequency. Damn it. Did I end up stumbling upon a fishman lair? Or maybe it's just my luck that I ended up coming across a school of fishmen swimming by. One of the fishmen neared him. The distance between them became increasingly shorter. Ni Yan felt a lump in his throat, his mind full of anxiousness and urgency. He firmly grasped onto the dagger in his hand. Hiding seems like it's going to be impossible now. I can only hope for an opportunity to escape. Only, my swimming speed can't be compared to that of a fishman. I'm not confident that I can really escape. The number of fishmen within the vicinity was simply too many. If all of them came over, the only path Ni Yan would have left to take was death. If I were to blame someone, I can only blame myself for getting too greedy. For the sake of finding treasure, I completely forgot about the dangers. One of the fishmen arrived in the area about 3 meters away from him. It seemed to have noticed something. Halting in place, it raised up the trident in its hand. Kee! Croak! The fishman opened its mouth and produced a bizarre call. Ni Yan gazed at his surroundings. At least 10 or so fishmen emerged, surrounding the area he had hidden himself in. The trident, which was as bright as snow, had already completely sealed off his escape route. He was finished. There was no way he could beat these fishmen. The speed at which they moved underwater was unusually quick. Furthermore, once their sharp teeth bit into their target, they wouldn't release their jaws until they tore their target to shreds. Escaping is absolutely impossible. It's also impossible to win, even if I try forcefully facing off against them. In his mind, Ni Yan was prepared to die. He quickly glanced at the body of the fishmen directly opposite of him. They had a soft red patch surrounding their abdomens. That area was their weak spot. Even if I die, I'll at least take one out with me. Just at that moment, the intense sound of a horn rang out from the distant direction of the lakeside. The quick tempo was filled with urgency, as the loud and clear sound continuously resonated into the far distance. This was the warning signal. The fishmen tribe was being attacked. The 10 or so surrounding fishmen near Ni Yan all stopped their movements at the same time, gurgle, croak, shifting their heads to listen carefully. They opened their mouths and spoke in a strange language. Right after, they all simultaneously swam towards the direction of the lakeside at a great speed. These 10 fishmen swam away, becoming increasingly distant. Over 100 fishmen rushed over from all directions, converging together towards a single point as if they were a shoal of fish. The fishmen gradually disappeared from Ni Yan's view. Ni Yan still felt apprehension in his heart. By some stroke of luck, the outcome of those subsequent events was surprising. However, they were still within his expectations. Chapter 10 Physician Blevins. Ni Yan glanced in the direction of the lakeside. It seems they've already started. The Fishmen tribe was suffering an attack by the victorious Return Guild. This was why the encircling fishmen had abandoned their attack and returned to aid their tribe. I never thought Victorious Returns people would end up saving my life. Ha ha. This world is so wonderfully strange. After all the fishmen had swum away, the surrounding vicinity was now completely safe. Hence, Ni Yan stepped up his search for nearby treasure chests. Eventually, he noticed another treasure chest hidden within the thick underwater vegetation. It was a white treasure chest, just like the last. The surrounding landscape, everything here coincides with the one in my memories. This is the location. Ni Yan opened the chest, digging through it. He felt a skill book make contact with his hands. It was the Gatherer skill book. As he held it in his hands, it turned into a streak of white light. The skill bar for supportive abilities had another skill appear. Gatherer. Pretty decent harvest. However, I don't know if there are any other treasure chests within this area. It would simply be a waste of time to keep searching. It doesn't matter. I still know many other locations where I can find treasure chests. When I level up a bit, I can go pick 'em up at any time. Ni Yan swam, shuttling back and forth between the aquatic plants. If he encountered a monster, he would avoid them by staying a far distance away. After about 10 minutes of swimming, he noticed a single island in the middle of Lake Rando. Only after noticing this did he swim towards the surface. System. You've discovered an island within the center of the lake. Reaching the shore, Ni Yan checked his coordinates. As he was investigating the surrounding area, he discovered a person sitting in the far distance, fishing by the shore. This NPC was a very odd old man. He would make a request to every single player who encountered him to retrieve fine silk. For every bundle of fine silk that was brought back, the player would receive 1 silk cloth. If fine silk was sold to an NPC, it would amount to 3 coppers. However, silk cloth could only be sold for 2 coppers. If one continued on like this, there would be a loss in profit. Even after continuously exchanging with him, this old man would still do absolutely nothing to compensate the player. There were many players who would complete this task. However, every one of them would continue to receive losses, never to receive a reward of any sort. Ni Yan also did this task in his previous life. Only after delivering 5 fine silk did he finally give up accepting this quest. Exchanging fine silk for silk cloth was truly a waste of money. Sometime later, a person who did not believe he would continue to receive nothing repeatedly accepted the quest. Only after delivering 30 fine silk did he finally receive a reward. This NPC would impart onto the player the combat medic skill. Not only this, but it would be at the intermediate level as well. After this information came out, it caused an uproar among the player base. One after another, they would continuously rush over to accept the quest. However, by that time, the NPC had already left. Currently in the area where Ni Yan was located, there were level 3 monsters known as water spiders that dropped fine silk. Obtaining 30 fine silk would probably require about 3 days of continuous grinding. It just so happened that he could farm these 30 pieces of fine silk while also leveling up. Exchanging 30 fine silk for 30 silk cloth was merely a loss of 30 coppers. Nothing more. Compared to an intermediate combat medic skill, it was truly a negligible amount. Ni Yan walked over to the old man. The strange old man muttered loudly to himself. Around this time of year, the Hilton stronghold would be besieged by the devil creatures that arise from the remote underground. There are numerous warriors who defend the stronghold. For the sake of safeguarding this lush and prosperous land, they pay with their blood and lives. The wounded suffer in anguish every day and night. To them, yesterday is the same as tomorrow and tomorrow is the same as yesterday. He turned his head towards Ni Yan and asked, "Youngster, now tell me, would it better if I fished here on the shore? Or would it be better if I fished while on the waters?" Quote, the old man had gray hair and appeared somewhat senile with his age. Numerous wrinkles were spread across his face, as if withered. His skin looked similar to tree bark, sagging like the folds of his skin. His ashen gray cloak hung low by his fishing rod. From his impression, Ni Yan's felt this NPC was a funny muddle-headed old man. He always asked a series of strange and odd questions, and it was fine as long as you somewhat answered them. However, at present, when Ni Yan heard the old man's words, "Yesterday is the same as tomorrow. Tomorrow is also the same as yesterday," they had a new type of meaning. This old man wasn't an old fool. Rather, he was actually quite wise. It was fine if you answered the question in whichever way you liked. However, as if goaded on by some supernatural force, Ni Yan answered, As long as you're able to catch fish. Shore or water. What difference does it make? Quote. Hearing Ni Yan's answer, the old man's eyes flashed with a strange glint. Noticing the change in the old man's expression as it fell upon his eyes, Ni Yan became increasingly convinced. This old man in front of him definitely wasn't simple. Time is akin to an illusion and moves like a pendulum. The months and years are wasted doing nothing and suffering eternally repeats. In the end, everything returns to dust even if those brave warriors are able to defend this vast great world. They won't be able to escape the pain of illness and the reaper of death. In the end, what meaning is there to life? The old man sighed. The meaning of life is to stubbornly prevail. To live without regrets, Ni Yan said. While deep in contemplation, these were the insights he had gained this life after living through his previous one. He continued replying to the old man's question. All their loved ones, their fellow brothers, all of them are here alongside them in this vast world. They continue to resist the attacks of their enemies for the sake of bringing them happiness. They stake their lives in order to defend this conviction. That is their honor and that is their glory. In doing so, the God of Light will protect them. Ni Yan speculated that this old man was very likely one of the NPCs from the Hilton stronghold, who left and journeyed outside in search of fine silk. Listening to Ni Yan's words, the muddled expression in the old man's eyes became clear. Young man, I need a lot of fine silk. Is it possible for you to help me obtain it? The old man asked. It's my desire to help in any way I can, Ni Yan happily replied. These were the exact words he had waited for. System. You've received a task. Physician Blevins has entrusted you the task of retrieving fine silk. Ni Yan began to recall. In his previous life, he had simply answered all these questions without much thought. The task he ended up receiving was, Nameless Old Man's Request. It seems the name of this current quest and the one he had received in the past weren't exactly the same. This old man ought to be the NPC physician in the Hilton stronghold. Did he come all the way from the Hilton stronghold for the sake of finding fine silk? The fact that this old man also taught the intermediate combat medic skill further confirmed Ni Yan's suspicions. All of that doesn't matter right now. First, I'll finish this quest and think about it later. Ni Yan bid farewell to the old man and headed south of the small island. That region of the lake was an area where water spiders roamed about. Although water spiders were level 3 monsters, their combat strength wasn't that great. Only when they were on the water's surface would they become somewhat of a problem. Once more, Ni Yan plunged into the lake, then stuck his head out of the water. This region of underwater space didn't have a lot of monster activity. Thus, he didn't have to worry about any monsters launching a sneak attack from below. Soon, he discovered a water spider. They were a species of spider that grew to a very large size. They were capable of moving about at high speeds on the water's surface. Unlike other spiders, they didn't use venom to attack. Furthermore, they were even afraid of humans. As long as a player didn't attack them, they wouldn't take the initiative to attack the player. Water spider. Level 3. Health. 80/80ths. Ni Yan gradually neared the water spider from behind. Swiftly, he raised his dagger and pounced forward, stabbing into the water spider's back. He managed to attack it several times in quick succession. The water spider shrieked miserably before lunging towards its attacker. Ni Yan quickly dodged. and then returned with another stab. Saving enough energy for a vital strike, he stabbed the water spider in the eye, letting out an agonized shriek. The water spider's legs shriveled up and curled towards its body as it floated on the surface of the water. After dying, it dropped a single copper. Ni Yan caught the copper coin it dropped before swimming off towards another water spider. The drop rate for fine silk was 0.5%. In other words, Ni Yan needed to kill around 6,000 water spiders in order to obtain the 30 pieces of fine silk. This would require about 3 days of non-stop grinding. 3 days would be enough time for Ni Yan to raise his level to 3, learn the combat medic skill, and return to town to purchase a few skill books. His strength would improve quite a bit. In the far distance, Ni Yan saw a water spider moving at high speed on the surface of the lake. A single spell fell from the heavens and struck the water spider down. Soon, a damage value of 36 floated over its head. It was Holy Smite, a spell used by holy mages. There's another person in this area? Ni Yan became vigilant and went on high alert. Looking far off into the distance, he noticed a person being pursued by a level 3 water spider. It was quite far away, so Ni Yan could only see that this person belonged to the holy mage profession. Not only this, but the holy mage was a woman as well. She was clutching a blue-colored staff in her hand and was wearing a white mage robe over her body. However, he was still unable to clearly distinguish her features. It seemed that she was in a bit of trouble. Ni Yan stayed silent for a moment. Afterwards, he dived underwater and swam towards her. If she was a hostile player, he would kill her without hesitation. However, if there was no enmity, he would lend her a hand. That holy mage was dealing with the pursuing water spiders. By coincidence, she was also swimming over in his direction. At last, Ni Yan's head broke out of the water. He was now approximately 5 meters away from her. Noticing another person, Ni Yan, popping out of the water, the holy mage tensed up. Immediately, she changed directions and swam over to another location. She was currently being chased by several water spiders. If she encountered a person who took pleasure in kicking others while they were down, it would undoubtedly mean her death. Both parties were already in close proximity. When the holy mage turned her head around, Ni Yan could clearly see the other person's appearance. She was a beautiful-looking young woman. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, with a single lock of hair hanging down from the side of her face. Her cheeks were white, and her eyes were as clear as water. Although conviction altered a player's appearance, they were only slight adjustments. The overall attractiveness of the player would not be altered. Hence, their level of attractiveness would fundamentally be the same as it was in reality. This was also one of the reasons why conviction drew people in. Ni Yan was able to clearly see at a glance that the holy mage across from him was a real beauty. The holy mage worryingly gazed over at where Ni Yan was located. Their two eyes converged. She turned around and continued to fend off the water spiders. Simultaneously evading 3 water spiders was definitely a little challenging. However, she still remained very calm. Using a haste scroll on herself, her speed immediately increased by several fold. After recognizing the opposite party's appearance, Ni Yan's mouth opened so wide a chicken egg could fit in it. How did I end up meeting her here? He couldn't help emotionally sighing at how minuscule the world was. The beautiful woman across from him was called Yao Yao. Dark mystery. Come to think of it, in his past life, the two of them actually had a rather complicated and ill-fated relationship. Never did he expect that they would meet again here. It appeared lovers or enemies could truly not avoid meeting with one another. Perhaps this type of chance encounter was meant to be. Ni Yan and his friends were going to enter an instance. However, they were short a mage. Thus, one of his friends brought Yao Yao into the team. This was the first time they had met. Afterwards, they gradually grew closer when they found more opportunities to party up later on and had many more adventures together. Old friends are the same as before. Ni Yan sighed with deep sorrow.